All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. Going to do a book chat today. We've got Parker back here. We got Woke Centrist, aka Dusty Cubes, aka Dustin Cubit as well. We're going to talk about this fascinating book that was written hundreds of years ago. I believe it might have been the 1600s, although I'll have to double check about that.
No,
But
it's
it's called
1840s.
1840s. Oh, okay. I didn't remember whether it was the 1600s or 1800s. But yeah, it's called the
No, it's
Memoirs
definitely
of Extraordinary.
1840s.
What's that?
Yeah, it's definitely 1840s because I know some of the stuff he covers are like post-colonial and um, like you have the witch trials and
Right, right.
some of the economic bubbles that have happened.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it's called Memoirs of Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. It gets into all kinds of fascinating mass delusions and it's basically mostly firsthand accounts and sort of analyses of people who believed that they saw werewolves and witches performing witchcraft and ghosts and performed seances and believed in all different things to do with alchemy and all different kinds of divination and some of the financial weird beliefs that Dusty mentioned there as well. So yeah, like we usually do, why don't you guys just start up by telling me what your thoughts are about it in general.
In general, I actually think it's kind of interesting that it kind of goes along with theory about how pop culture actually kind of follows a lot of economic kind of distresses that happen. So it's been known that like if we're in an economically distressed time, then it's been theorized that a lot of like zombie apocalypse kind of stuff is really popular. And when you're economically doing well, then you get a lot of like Terminator, a lot of Matrix, a lot of the your own kind of your own kind of myths will come based off of your economic standing. So if you're doing economically well, you think about how you'll be like crushed by your greatness. It's like Terminator is okay, we've got AI, but now AI, because of this grandiose like thought that we have, is going to ultimately crush us. And I think it's interesting that that's not a theory that's just been new, because to me that was completely a new theory altogether. Knowing that this is something that has been popularized, and actually that's something that kind of drew me to Jordan Peterson as well. But it's been something that's been theorized for, well, I guess centuries now. Is kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, that is an interesting theme. I didn't notice that to the extent that you did. That's a good point. Yeah. So what about you, Dusty?
Well, I found it pretty informative, entertaining. As you know, I read a lot of fantasy material. So there's a pretty huge chunk of book that covers a lot of what fantasy material is derived by. So we're talking, sorcerers, magicians, alchemists, werewolves, and everything else, witches. So I'm just going through this thinking, I'm like, I wonder how many fantasy authors have read this book, as there's
Yeah.
so much stuff in here that's pretty reiterated in a lot of fantasy literature. Um, and also with the, I thought the financial stuff was pretty interesting. And usually they were talking about a couple different bubbles in the ACND, a company and stuff like that. And then there's a huge chunk on the Crusades. To be
Yeah.
honest, it's really hard for me to follow that part. Um, but yeah, in all, I do kind of see what he was getting at, because this guy who wrote the book was considered a journalist of his time. And from what I understand, this is actually a collection of essays that he wrote regarding these various different issues. So it really, one of the things I do like about it is that it's not so old that the language becomes unwieldy. to listen to. In my case, I was listening to the audiobook. It's modern enough that you're not going to just like drone out. I do know that possibly because of the age of the material, it is a little bit verbose in the way that it's written. I think there's one section where he basically names a whole bunch of different Mancies.
Yeah.
And it just goes on for like 2 minutes with all these names and different conjurations and things.
Yeah.
He's probably could have used a pretty good editor throughout a lot of it, but I thought it was actually pretty good. I did think a lot of the stuff that he talked about was interesting, and I did follow some of it up by checking into it as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Like you were saying, it's really like I learned a lot about, like you were saying, how like the sheer number of different types of divination there was, or like mancies, or like in terms of divination, for example, it's like divination by literally everything you can think of, like divination by moon phases, divination by the length of your fingernails, divination by this arrangement of dirt, and all those sorts of things. And like it was interesting how I appreciated how he sort of approached these topics and these people with a relatively objective eye. Like he was clearly mildly critical, but he obviously wasn't like trying to sell the legitimacy of these things too. He was sort of mostly, like you were saying, kind of treating it like he was a journalist, and so it was really interesting to learn about like the details of how seances are performed and the different signs that they use to declare someone as being a werewolf, and all the giant list of things that can get people accused of witchcraft, and like the different things that lead to people believing in ghosts, and the sheer amount of time that legitimate scientists spent on pursuing things in alchemy, like finding the source, the philosopher's stone, and like trying to turn things into gold. It was just
You were about to say the sorcerer's stone.
Yeah, all the sorcerer's stone. Yeah.
From Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Which is basically the same thing.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like you Americans and you and Canadians and North Americans, you're not capable of understanding what a philosopher's stone is. So we're going to call it the sorcerer's stone.
It's a kind of a weird localization that they did there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably copyright purposes.
Yeah, that could be it.
I think it's interesting just how it's kind of like a documentary or a document of American, well, not American, but I guess like Western myths, and just how myths can, I guess, perpetuate throughout as a society, and just the different ways that we believe in, just the different ways we construct myths. I thought that was interesting in the fact that from an objective point of view, there's a lot of writing that I remember like thinking that even as he's writing and he's being critical of all of these different myths that he's looking at, he's even kind of going like, well, why exactly are we believing in these myths? That was like the underlying theme that I remember thinking a lot about as far as why he was even writing this down, because I like to think about the underlying purpose of whatever book I'm reading. And I think it's kind of like, if I could say this, it's almost like he was a Jordan Peterson of the time, and just having a lot of these different myths that he's looking at and kind of like writing down all of the different things that he sees. And he's like, a seance is kind of extreme. The Crusades are kind of extreme. And these are all a lot of extreme myths that we kind of build a lot of our society around. And I just remember thinking about how critical and how like objective he was about the criticisms as well. So I don't know. It's I'm trying to think of specifics, but they're all like leaving my mind right now. But I remember specifically about the alchemist. He thought that it was kind of a stupid endeavor, was what I kind of got from all of his
Yeah.
from all of his writings. And he was like, "Well, how retarded could you be to try to?" And I mean, not directly saying that, but kind of that was just the underlying. And I can't remember any specifics, but I remember that was the underlying tone of almost everything that he said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
different take though about the alchemists because when he was describing them, it seemed like a lot of the alchemists who were performing alchemy knew that it was a sham and it was more of like a con job to get these types of residencies with really powerful people who will pay for all their stuff and their experiments, and they just get to lounge around for a couple of years, knowing that they're conning these rich people out of money by performing these performative acts of turning things to gold and whatnot, and them fully knowing that it's a complete trick, and then using that scientific knowledge to trick people and thinking that they can turn things to gold. So I saw it not as a pursuit. I guess some of the people were legitimately trying to pursue the Philosopher's Stone, but it also seemed like many of the alchemists were doing it as a grift in itself.
That's interesting. Yeah, I kind of I kind of noticed a little bit of both there too. I mean, to me, I guess it kind of seemed like for the most part, people seem to genuinely believe in alchemy, but then there were definitely some grifters who were manipulating people too. And another interesting aspect I thought I noticed about that was that some of this bullshitting around in alchemy actually led to people like inventing some legitimate chemistry out of it. So like there were some positive results that came out of it. And in terms of what you were saying there too, Parker, that's interesting too in terms of what you said about like the psychology of how these ideas develop. Because I think if I remember correctly in the description for it on Goodreads, it's sort of like meant to be kind of a study of mass psychology, which is apparently like one of the first of its kind. So it's interesting how he studies that, like how there can be mass psychological capture of an idea. And going back to what you said as well, in terms of how people construct myths and mythologies, it's interesting too because it kind of gets into like how with witchcraft, for example, it was just them trying to come up with explanations for things, like this whole town gets struck with a disease and an enormous amount of the population dies, so it's because of this witch over here, and she's all suspicious because she's this old ugly widow and she's kind of creepy and weird. Or like, and then people get so carried away with it that they get paranoid. Like I remember one specific example was if someone wipes off the top of a stool, that means they're performing a spell and therefore they're a witch. And then there's of course the example of witch trials that we all know about. I mean, other than specifically the Salem witch trials, the idea that if you take a witch and you try to drown them and they do drown, that means they're a witch. But if they float, that also means they're a witch. So it's all a lot of fascinating factors that go into these ideas.
Well, you see how pliable that kind of those kind of, I guess, parameters are. So you get another example of how people can essentially, in their own way, try to demonize a group of people. And it's interesting just seeing that and seeing, the delusions that everybody will feed into just based off of, maybe there was somebody that somebody didn't like, or maybe there was a whole village of people that might go like, Cheryl, she's being a real bitch. So I think that it's witch hunting time. So, I don't know if that's how it went down, but I could definitely see with pliable parameters like that, how that could happen. And it's kind of like what Dusty was saying, with alchemy. you can start anything off as a con job. And yeah, sometimes you might have some legitimate things that come out of it. But if you have an entire delusion, it makes me wonder what delusions we're under right now that we'll look back and our kids will look back on and go like, oh man, you believe that horse shit? That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Oh, you mean like anti-vaxxers and stuff like that?
Oh yeah.
Or like flat earthers, where it's like, yo, man, Galileo literally fucking like solved this forever ago, and it was like, no, we're not in this weird delusion where everything's flat, and it's like that theory doesn't even make sense, but people hold on to it for. I found out it was some kind of like Christian reason, but even that, I'm like. So is that going to be like the werewolf of this time? Is that going to be like just the theory that everybody goes like, yo, man, remember how we thought we solved that whole like round thing? And they had satellite images. People were still fucking around with that. Can you believe that shit?
Yeah. I bet you could say that in the future about a wide variety of different conspiracies. Like I know you got really into conspiracies for a while, a long time ago, Dusty. Like, what do you think some of the crazy ones, like I know there's that guy David Icke, for example, who believes that like the world's controlled by lizard people. And
well, even back then I thought David Icke was crazy, but like, you know, there were a lot about, you know, Planet X and Ancient Aliens and yeah, like all of those ones I thought were super fascinating. I don't know, David Icke I just never really got into because like it's all great if they have a interesting narrative, and I never found his that interesting. Where he's just basically said there's like these hidden lizard people in high places in society that are running things. His wasn't very fascinating, but I liked like all the different ones. Like I seriously entertained like Alex Jones stuff back then. And back then his deal was it wasn't partisan like it is now. Like because he was going after Bush, and I remember that quite vehemently, that he was pretty much going after anybody in power. So he went after the Clintons, he went after Bush, but Trump comes along and he's like, oh yes, Trump can do no harm. But yeah,
there was a reason for that. There was. Like
the reasons is because Trump believes the conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
like he actually believes like Alex Jones type of BS. So he has to give Trump a pass for that. And I think that's one of the main reasons.
Well, on the real though, some of those theories actually like did have some. If you really thought about them, you're like, yo, man, that shit really does sound right. And the thing that like always fucks me up,
like agent provocateurs and like I watched a few of his documentaries from like 20 years ago that I heard about from Joe Rogan, like that one about oh shit, what's that? Oh yeah, Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove. Well, that's real.
Worship the owl god and shit like that. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about Alex Jones. Like he'll say some shit that's like off the wall, and you'll be like, you know what, that's probably not real. And then you look it up, and you're like, oh shit. And then it's like, and then he puts you on that road to being like a tinfoil hat guy. But then as soon as like you're about to jump off, then he does shit like the Sandy Hook thing, and you're like, oh okay. All right.
Yeah, there was a very specific like Alex Jones thing that he did that got me off of that train. But and it was a very like simple one, and he was ranting about FEMA death camps and whatnot, and he was like showing people these satellite photos of like stacks and stacks of what he thought were coffin covers, and they were coffin covers, and he's like, oh yeah, the FEMA is stockpiling these coffins, and they're going to put people in death camps and yada yada yada. And we come to find out is that it was a place manufacturing coffin covers, and what we didn't know is that those coffin covers have to be replaced every few years. They're not A lot of people are buried in the United States. Those coffin, what they do is they put the coffins inside like these plastic containers, and then they bury it. But you got to replace those containers like every 10 or 20 years. So they're always manufactured and built and sent out over, everywhere in the United States. And you got to imagine, okay, how many of these coffins covers are going to be in use? It's going to be a ton of them. So he was just flat out wrong about the purpose of these coffin covers. It had nothing to do with any FEMA death camp or anything of that nature. It's just, there's a high demand for these things because they are not, they are, one, they're biodegradable, and two, you got to keep, the reason they make these is so that when it rains, the water doesn't seep into the coffin. So it's kind of a requirement to have, unless you just want to have like a damaged coffin and a damaged, well, of course the body's going to decompose, but to respect the dead, they use these to try to reduce damage to the actual coffin. Because those coffins are expensive, man. they can get up there. So they just change these covers out, and these are just to protect the coffins. And I was like, dude, Alex Jones is just fucking nuts at this point. And I was, because I started to see like a whole bunch of other stuff that they were saying that was like easily debunked, and then I was kind of noping out of the conspiracy scene at that point.
And then, like, even with stuff that he's occasionally right with, he gets carried away with it too. Like he apparently was talking about the whole Jeffrey Epstein pedophile ring for years and years ago before anyone found out what it really is. But then he was talking about that on one of his Joe Rogan podcasts, and then he went way off the fucking deep end and started talking about how it's connected to how the world is controlled by interdimensional aliens, an interdimensional cabal of interdimensional child molesters, aliens who want to molest human children for some reason.
The whole like elite child molester thing is so dumb.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, all socioeconomic levels, doesn't matter who you are, there's going to be child molesters, whether they're poor ones or they're super rich ones who could get away with it. They're going to exist. You can try to do some shit about it, I guess, but I guess he only cares about super rich child molesters.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about like the poor ones who just get tossed in jail anyway not all the time, but just the ones that are in power. Like, I respect that he's going after the people in power, but trying to find like the whole QAnon child molester thing is just super ridiculous.
It's like that's like those guys who were talking about that stuff in the Borat sequel that we watched and we're talking about recently, right? Like how something about how Hillary Clinton likes to drink the blood of children and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that they wanted to. What was it? It's the whole like fake drug that was in Hunter S. Thompson's book. What was it? Adrenochrome. So they want to get like they want to like get this chemical and extract it from their brain so that people could use it. And it's a totally made up drug. It's like doesn't exist. But people still believe that that's the case.
Right.
Like, you can't literally extract that from someone's brain and inject it. That's not how it works.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the in terms of conspiracy theories, that the ancient aliens thing is interesting. I like read again because I hear about all of this shit from Joe Rogan originally. I read that book of his that he recommended from his crazy conspiracy theory friend Eddie Bravo, 12th Planet, I think it was, by Zachariah Sitchin. And I thought,
yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, like this, like a part, like to me, I was mostly thinking, well, this actually is a lot of interesting history about Sumeria and stuff like that. But then he goes like, and then there are these secret aliens who made humans and stuff. I'm like, nah, I'm out at that. I'm out with that shit, bro. And then I started watching that Ancient Alien show for a while, but then I bailed very quickly because it very quickly jumped the shark. It talked about like that movie Cowboys and Aliens with Daniel Craig, where like, no, this was real, bro. In the West, there were aliens.
Yeah, I don't know. People just get totally nuts with that stuff. And the crazy thing is, because of social media, you just see people getting more nuts with conspiracy theories now. It used to be just people that were kind of super antisocial, didn't have many social connections whatsoever. They kind of just twiddled their thumbs in the basement and listened to Coast to Coast AM like at 2 a.m. every night. But now it's like everywhere. It's like inescapable. It's not contained in that little niche anymore. It's just spreading everywhere like wildfire, so much so that you have celebrities, believing in flat Earth. So it's pretty crazy how this false and crazy information can spread and how people will believe it.
Well, it's the same people that were doing that AM like basement thing, but now they have a platform to consolidate. So it's like when you go to a Facebook fan page and you see like, yo, this fucking theory that I think is crazy has a million other people that fucking agree with that, right? And you think that that's a lot, right? In the US alone, there's 350 million people. That's like less than a percentage point. So that's just all of the people that would normally just be like, yo, like Janet, she's fucking weird. We don't invite her to parties. And she used to just be in her own basement doing that shit on her own. Now, all of a sudden, Janet has a bunch of other Janets that meet up and they're like, yo, man, that crazy shit that I was thinking? Yo, man, we're totally in on this together. I'm with you. I know exactly what's going on with what you're thinking about right now.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like when delusions become kind of like one of those things where it's like, if you're in a room with a gas leak, right? And everybody starts going like, do you hear those voices? The thing about it is you don't realize because everybody's in the room with the gas leak. But if there's somebody outside going like, looking through the window going like, what the fuck is wrong with those people in there? What are they doing? And that's what we don't, I guess, we have that, but at the same time, like, we all have our own like house that we have a little gas leak that we're all kind of sucking in the same fumes with, which is why conspiracy theories will always be around. Because even right now, like if you want to talk about conspiracy theories, the most fascinating one that I think is that like with the Sidney Powell shit and everything that's going on here, it might be like they're trying to make a storyline where the Democrats stole the election and they did it extra hard and they have like mail-in ballots and like Alex Jones is pushing this shit fucking hard as shit. And I'm like, yo, I can't stop watching it. I gotta be honest. I watch it from time to time and I'm like, oh my God, like I just eat the popcorn with how delicious the theories are. They're like, yo, like there's like theories that are as mild as, okay, it was just a USB drive that they switched out, all the way up to, yo, man, so they took out the original people that were supposed to do any of the ballot runs, right? And then they replaced them with like Russian clones. And I'm like, where the fuck is Russia at? Where the fuck is that coming from? So, like, I don't know when it's going to stop, but I enjoy the fact that like, at least we can say that there's myths that we make all the time. And I don't know, I'm interested in seeing how this myth turns out and what we'll tell our kids about it. We'll just be like, I hope it just blows over and it's like, yeah, some crazy shit happened. And then we just stop. But I have a feeling it's be like, and then for like 6 months, man, shit was real fucking strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna have like 20 years in the future when they're teaching kids about, the 2020s or the 2010s. It's just gonna be a string of Karen videos of how people are just freaking out over stupid bullshit.
Yeah.
Because of conspiracy shit that they saw online.
Yeah.
So that's going to be like, here's example A, and it shows like a Karen flipping out over a mask or something, and then example B, Karen number 2 and whatnot. So I don't know. I think we're going to see something like that, at least in history curriculum in 20 years. But it's gonna take a while before they can fully study that period. It's such a weird and transitional period for society. The 2010s. It's gonna be there's gonna be some type of moniker that includes the word revolution. I don't know what it's gonna be, but it will. We had the different revolutions before, like the Industrial Revolution and whatnot. I think the 2010s is going to be its own thing.
It's like the crazy or conspiracy theory revolution or something like that.
I would say,
I don't know, social media revolution, most likely.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And I'd say
Yeah.
it's also a philosophical one too. It's probably one of the deepest philosophical kind of times, because if you think about it, if you look at Aldous Huxley's book, Brave New World, and if you look at 1984, like those were two kind of ways that the world could go. And we kind of saw 1984 with communism. Now we're kind of experimenting with the Aldous Huxley side, and it doesn't look exactly the way that we think it will, but with all the technological advancements that we have with DNA, kind of editing with CRISPR-Cas9. We have a lot of, you have those 2 kids in China that were designer kids that are, immune to AIDS. And when people are doing things like that, we don't necessarily know what those ramifications are now. But the fact that that can has already been open and we're not currently looking at it, that could be something that's very big. And take into account, we also are kind of moving towards having this philosophical outlook of, trying to eliminate prejudice, whatever that means. And that all kind of consolidating with social media. I feel like we're in a very deep philosophical, like, what do you want to do with all this? I feel like we've got all of these vast tools in front of us, and we have different ways that we can go about using them. And the way that I see is most tyrannical is the one that's being touted as being most benevolent now. But at the same time, I could also see how if things go too corporate and you don't have intervention with things, then that could also be bad. So, it's just an interesting time, and there's a breaking point because we've gotten to a point where we've seen the problems with what we have, and we've seen that we have vast technology, and it's kind of like, what are we going to use that for? Are we going to censor? Are we going to try to make one kind of world mindset? Are we going to try to make sure that free speech is reigning supreme? But I just think it's a lot of things are happening all at the same time, and it's a very deep philosophical kind of breaking point. And I don't know who's going to write about it, but it's going to be something spectacular to watch. That's all I can say.
Yeah, well said, man. Yeah, that's I've heard people point that out before about how, if you compare 1984 and Brave New World, then right now we're more like Brave New World, and that's a really interesting one too, because it relates back to, like you were saying, what sort of philosophical revolution is this going to be labeled at in the future, and like what different directions you could go. Like it's very convincing to say that, it doesn't seem like people are intellectually analyzing things enough to lead to a good sort of philosophical revolution. And there are a lot of tools out there, but people are being misdirected into like this bad thing. But I mean, we can have hope because like you said, the things are available out there for us to correct this sort of thing. But this relates back to another thing that you were saying, Parker, that made me think about this, about how, if we're talking about a flat earther, they might have just been alone in their basement before, but now they can go on social media or on YouTube and find like they can find like 10,000 or even a million flat earthers, and they think that's a lot, whereas that's probably the only million people in the entire world who believe that the earth is flat. Because as you and I were talking about when we were talking about that documentary, The Social Dilemma, Dusty, we were talking about how they discussed in that documentary how these algorithms attached to social media platforms were literally designed to point you to the most outrageous content possible, because they want to do whatever takes you keeps you on there as long as possible, and the most outrageous content is most likely to keep you on there for as long as possible. Because if you just take like 5 minutes to look up online and see, oh, the earth is round because of all this giant mountain of evidence collected over the entire history of science over the past couple hundred years at least, it's much more interesting to go down this rabbit hole of this really intricate and detailed narrative about how these people are concealing the fact that the earth is really flat, bro. And this is exactly why all of this evidence is wrong. And look at all these people who believe this stuff. Isn't it so amazing that we're so enlightened that no one else believes what we do?
And I think it's gotten to a point now that if we have so much information available, it used to just be kind of big to just know things. Now everybody kind of has access to know things. Now you have to be the person that knows the thing, which I think that philosophically that's good, because it means we're more on the track of trying to find the truth societally. The problem is there's so many different off tracks to that. And you have more access to the truth, whatever that happens to be, whatever your intellectual pursuit is at the time. You have more access to that now, and you have better information to it. But the problem is it's like you said with the whole going towards extremes. I think about it as like the green hair syndrome. It's like now everybody has fucking green hair, but that used to be an extreme kind of point of view. But it got so many views that now people are like, it doesn't matter that we have, green hair or it's purple or it's whatever, it's blue. Like that's just natural. Like it's kind of like this consolidation of like anime culture into Western culture. And now we all like just go along with that, even though that was kind of niche before. And I don't know what that's going to ultimately mean, but those algorithms they mean a lot. They mean a lot as far as the philosophy that we all live by and what quote unquote good and quote unquote bad is.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, take a call there, Dusty. Yeah, it's interesting what you were saying, like how we define these terms. And I've read a lot of different philosophers write about and thought a lot about how these terms like good and bad can get defined, how they get defined differently across history, and of course across different cultures with different practices, like different religious practices or spiritual practices, it all depends on the relevant culture, the point in history, their religion, how they express it, because people can even have all of those factors as the same, but they express them differently, which is what leads to different like divisions within different religions and within different political ideologies too. Like there are many different versions of the left, many different versions of right. There's a lot of disagreement among libertarians. I think there are literally hundreds or maybe even thousands of different denominations of Christianity. And then there are all sorts of different types of being a Muslim or being Jewish or being any of the polytheistic religions like Hinduism or any, like literally any religion or any political ideology, which is how you can get into conspiracy theory thinking too. And it's how you can also get into cults, because like cults are kind of like literally religion explicitly mixed in with like conspiracy theory thinking, basically.
Yeah, conspiratorial thinking, and uh, also just religious need for belonging and a higher purpose. And usually, what separates a cult from a religion is like they're like God is the answer in a religion, and within a cult, it's this one guy that's here right now. That's how you know it's a cult. So I guess that it's offering the same thing, but it's offering it from a predatory point of view as far as a cult. But then again, it's like I'm one of those people that when you say predatory, like you can't really prey upon somebody that doesn't, I guess, subconsciously, psychologically want to be preyed upon. So that's even kind of like a point of free will. It's kind of like where free will and manipulation kind of meet, which, is once again part of societal belief because it's kind of like, how much do you want to let society manipulate you as far as what you think? Because another big thing about perception is it's a lot about who's writing the story. Because it's kind of like that old question: what's the difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter? Whoever the fuck wins. So
Yep.
at the end of the day, it's like if the British won, then they'd be like, can you believe those fucking terrorists over in the United States? They tried to take this shit over, but we fucking quelched that. But now, since America won, we're like, yeah, we were fucking freedom fighters, man. We wanted all of our shit, and we just wanted to break away from the queen or not the queen, but the king at the time. And that's the way that we wanted to live. And we believe that story because culturally, I mean, that satiates us. And now, the biggest issue we have now is, as far as a philosophical breaking point, is we found out that there's more information than ever, that's not necessarily the exact perception that everybody was taught. Because, I mean, nobody was questioning shit when you had to recite the Pledge of Allegiance and you just learned, one form of history throughout your entire life, and then you just went on. It started getting kind of weird when we had the internet and people could actually look shit up and go like, oh, shit, there's mad blood on our hands and shit. So then, that's when people started going like, should we feel guilty about that? That's when like all white fragility. And that's when all these different philosophical belief systems that kind of perpetuated from having a bit too much information. It's almost like, I find this is like another way of, if you want to take another metaphor, this is another form of us eating the apple. It's like we were offered the apple from the tree of knowledge, and now we've eaten from it. And it's like, what the fuck do we do with all of this knowledge that we have? So I don't know. It's interesting to see the kind of myths that are going to come from this and what people are going to say about things after this too.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in seeing what kind of myths come from the fact that we're in isolation and people can feed into their psychosis and the way that they feel about things more now.
Yep.
So, it's like think about that. Think about what a child might come up with if you could become a great writer right now and you grew up in a time where for a little bit you couldn't actually see any of your friends and you actually had an anti social kind of experience and an antisocial experience that came upon you at your formative years. Like I wonder what a 7-year-old boy or girl is thinking right now and what kind of books and what kind of fantasies might come from this, because this is a very interesting time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like especially education, like the education of children right now, while everyone really, but is being affected because of how much it's been changed. Like, the attendance of school, at least here. Oh, Dusty dropped out there. Hopefully he'll be back in a minute. Like here, at least the attendance of students, either the attendance of students is staggered, or they might think about sending most of the students, or at least a lot of the older students, to basically sending them home and basically being educated online. Because I know, there's Dusty. I know you back there, Dusty?
Yeah, my internet's going to be spotty for the next 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for at least here recently in Alberta, there's been a big uptick in COVID-19, and it's the worst province in the country. So they're taking more drastic measures, like with elementary schools, they're sending all of the, I think all of the kids grades 7 and up to do online learning. And I know at my local college, it was all made online, like right after the COVID outbreak last year too. And the so all of these measures are being taken, and you know just it's just a different learning experience for children to wear masks at school and have social distancing and be around kids less, and especially if you're doing all of your learning online. I mean, like I even noticed for myself when I was at college last semester, just how different it is to basically just get educated online. Like basically it means, like, for my philosophy class, for example, it was kind of more like a podcast, because he would give his lecture and we would ask questions and stuff like that. But I mean, even though I personally am an introvert, I still missed out on the, like, human interaction with students and the teacher there at the physical college. And like, especially younger kids, if they're missing out on that interaction with other kids, that's like a really important time for childhood development when you're at school, I would say. So yeah, that's exactly why it's a good point that you made about um, like, in terms of what I was saying specifically, how children are going to be impacted by how different the world is right now with COVID-19.
Well, I was kind of thinking about it in terms of even the book, because it's kind of like we're looking at the origins of these different kind of delusions that were kind of all felt. So, what kind of delusions might be felt by people that are, I'm thinking about children that might be in not the best home situation, and now you have to stay there, and there's no way of getting out of that. I'm thinking about, because there's reasons for things like werewolves, not outside of the context of this book, werewolves and wolves in general. Like I really wondered, why is it that a wolf is usually the badass or the worst kind of being within all of these stories? Because there's like a fox is like thought of as being kind of wise. You have owls and things. Why are wolves thought of as being so bad? The reason why they were thought of as being so bad is if you looked at like the European wolf problem, like around like the 1600s, 1500s in like London and everything, they would just come in and they would just like fucking drag away just people and shit.
Yeah.
It was just bad. So when you know the origins of it, you go like, oh, so wolves are supposed to be like the ultimate evil. Like no matter what the evil is, if that evil is manipulation, if that evil is just eating you, if that evil is just they're evil. Okay. So I wonder and I mean, if you look at Terminator is warning of technology, and we didn't even have the technology we do now. And that was considered as being, watch out for that shit. That was kind of a modern myth. I wonder what a child growing up in this will ultimately come up and be like, you know what? I think that the myth that we're all feeling, but none of us are actually saying, is this. And I'm too old to feel it now because I'm too plugged in, but I really am interested in seeing what the myths are of the even younger than the Gen Zers. Because think about that, like things will go back to normal. Think about having your formative years like kind of stopped where things were just not normal for a second, and then you're supposed to act like things are going to be. And I don't know what the werewolves of next time is going to be. And I mean, and you were saying you're an introvert, right? Like, actually, have you ever taken Myers-Briggs before?
Yeah, I took it once a few years ago or so. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that my introversion was very high.
Well, like, what is? And I have an appreciation. I'm an extrovert, but I have an appreciation. Like, what was your exact? Like, what was it all together?
I don't remember. I think it was it might have been INFTP. I don't remember what.
You could either be an F or a T.
I know it was intuitive, and I know it was intuitive, and I know I was like thinker more than a feeler,
and a sensor rather than perceiver rather than a judger.
Yeah, a perceiver rather than a judger.
INTP. It was INTP.
Yeah, INTP. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're an INTP. I'm an ENTP.
Okay.
Which is funny because like I'm supposed to be like the most introverted of the extroverts. So I totally dig what you're saying when it's like, I don't necessarily want to interact with you, but I do like knowing that you're there, you know? So like, I don't necessarily want to talk to you like that, but I do want to have you around. And I always had that growing up. I wonder what it would be like to, and especially when you're a child, you're more emotional and you're more pliable. And when you don't have that feedback, or when the only feedback that you have is from your siblings or from your family, and like, I guess that would be a testament to what your family and your siblings are like. But I'm very interested in seeing what monsters are being made right now, so to speak.
Yeah. Like you were saying, like these mass delusions that they get into in the book, they have like legitimate reasons behind them. Like the conclusions are incorrect, but the reasons behind them make sense because like they hijack our natural psychology, as we were talking about, and people are always forming these narratives because that's what just humans inherently do. Like you mentioned with the werewolves, it was because wolves were a huge danger in that area at the time, and like with alchemy, for example, they thought they were like a lot of them anyway thought they were doing legitimate science, like you could actually scientifically achieve everlasting life, which is an understandable goal to try to achieve. And with divination, it's a good it seems cool to want to know what happens in the future, and there are a lot of different factors that can convince us, like coincidentally, that this particular type of divination works, and all sorts of that stuff like that. And I know people who have told me that they've seen ghosts before. I don't believe them, but I know people who have said that to me. And then there are still people who call themselves witches today, and there are people who believe in stuff like divination and alchemy still, and there are people who believe in all sorts of this different stuff today, like people who believe that there are psychics and people like that. Like I used to get into arguments one time with this friend that I had, and I eventually just decided, hey, if that helps you and it's not harming you, then good for you. And they believed in like all of that stuff, like astrology and psychics, and forget what that other one, but that other one that sounds like that's sort of like a psychic, but it starts with an M. I forget what it is, but yeah, she believed all that kind of stuff. And it's surprising the number of people that I've met that do believe in like one or another of these things that I think make no sense to me.
Well, I mean, why do you think things like that have lasted? Because I mean, if you look at a psychic, we've always had, seers, or you've had, gypsies, or you've had, fortune tellers. These are things that have been around forever. I mean, even, priests that could, directly talk to God, shamans. We believe something like that within the background of our societies always, no matter where you go. I mean, if you go to, Eastern kind of belief systems, they thought about the Oni, the demons. If you're going with Japanese culture, and then there happened to be underlying, I guess, personality traits that were along with that. I mean, that was the whole thought behind, the Greek gods too. That's why they were so nasty, like Mars. Well, not Mars, that was Roman, but Ares, god of war. Like he was thought of as being, anger. That's why it was red, and that's why you need to. And when you get overtaken by anger, you're no longer yourself. So it's almost like it's a god that took you over. So there was a reason for that. So why do you think we need to have underlying these stories that we tell ourselves? Like, and why does it feel like? And I mean, we don't ever say this, but why does it almost feel? And I know that you feel this too, because we're both from Western civilization. Why does it feel like it's kind of necessary? Like it's something that always has to be around, and there's always somebody that that needs that. Not anybody that like you and I might not need it, but intellectually it stays around, and there's people that feed into it, like your friend that's into astrology and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think like you were talking about, and we've been talking about a little bit, like people have this impulse to just search for narratives, and most people have this sort of religious impulse too, to believe those sorts of things. And I mean, if I had to theorize, I would guess, like I've often agreed with people who said that Nietzsche was right about what he said about, how God is dead, meaning like, the old gods are dead and we killed them by just culture changing to be less attached to religion, and that will probably get replaced with something else. And we definitely see that today with like how polarized people are politically and the insane narratives they believe about the other side. Like, all Republicans are like evil, racist bastards, and they voted for Trump because they're assholes and they want to harm black people or something like that. And then, the other direction, like Democrats are, or like Dusty and I talked about Candace Owens' books yesterday. I think the subtitle of Blackout is something like how Black America can escape the second Democrat plantation, because Democrats are the ones that we should blame for slavery, only Democrats. And then the people I know who have gotten into things like astrology and psychics and things like that, this could be coincidental, but all of them that I know, they're not religious at all. They don't have any sort of religious upbringing, so maybe it's somewhat of a replacement for that.
Yeah, I think psychologically, for some reason, we need that. I mean, I can say to myself, after having the spiritual awakening that we discussed earlier on a couple podcasts ago, well, at least as far as my participation goes, I remember having a distinct feeling of grounding once I felt spiritually aligned with something, because I wouldn't say that I'm atheist. I'd say I'm more agnostic, but I feel like maybe agnostic is probably the best way to go, because like there's a bit of truth in all religions now, where I used to think that it was all bullshit. Now I'm like, it's all true, but to a certain extent, and as far as you want to take it. But I needed that personally within myself to have a, I guess, complete narrative for myself, if that makes sense. And I think that that's kind of the reason why we make up these myths. It's kind of a completion of our frailties as human beings, maybe, or maybe it's a completion of an understanding of things that are a phenomenon that are happening on a social level. Like witches to this day, like I don't know, I feel like that's like the ultimate like mean girl kind of thing. It's like, I have a problem with you, so then let me label you this horrible thing and have horrible ramifications. And then, as we stated before, it's like if you float, if you sink, either way, depending on the way that I feel that day, you're a fucking witch. That in itself is kind of interesting, that in mass people were like, yeah, that seems like that's a real good idea. And when that happens, a lot of people dismiss and just go like, oh, it was crazy. And it's like, was it? Because like crazy shit is like fascism. We talk about fascism now, but it's like Italy and Germany both went and straight up called it fascism. We're like, that's a good idea. And the same thing goes with communism. Everybody goes like, that's some foul shit. But it's like you only say that at the aftermath. There was a time where people were like, and I'm proudly communist. You don't know it's foul until you have ramifications and you have reasons why. So it's kind of interesting to find out why philosophically we need these stories and why we need to always have some kind of I find it to be a bridge between the lack of knowledge and the knowledge we actually have, and then you make it tangible by coming up with something. And I personally find social delusions to be closer to progress, because at least if you have a social delusion, you're trying to solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to look at it, but I think it's something that just as humans we just need. It's like you said, we need narratives to just exist for some reason. I don't know why that is, but we do.
Yeah, I mean I've talked to many times before, I would say, about how I used to be a militant atheist, and one of the things that sort of removed, at least gradually removed, the militancy of my atheism, and then eventually led to me being, I would say I would classify myself now as sort of like an agnostic atheist, just in the sense that I don't believe any gods exist, but I'm not totally convinced that I'm right about anything. And I think that literally anything is possible, even if the probability is extremely small, and that I could be literally wrong about everything. I'm not even 100% sure that I exist or that reality exists. And I learned from Jonathan Haidt about how people are actually run by basically our intuitions and emotions rather than our rational thinking. And I've read other books too, like Jonathan Haidt's first book, Happiness Hypothesis, about how there are psychological truths in religions, even if the religious aspects of them are false. And I've read other books that are similar like that, like Robert Wright's book called Why Buddhism is True, which how he talks about how basically, specifically Western secular Buddhism, the psychological principles of that are basically, they make total sense whether you apply anything spiritual to them or not. So I think that makes a lot of sense too, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Dusty? Is your internet back there now?
Yeah, it's been back. I was just listening to what you guys were saying. But yeah, this is some deep shit, man.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, we went into a lot of deep and important related factors.
Going into the psychology of things.
Yep.
Started getting into some Jonathan Haidt.
Yep.
Well, I mean, if you're going to talk about social delusions, you have to talk about the psychology of it. I mean, like, where's the origins of, like, why do we all agree on that? Why is it that even now when we talk about werewolves, why is it that it's always universal that a werewolf is killed with a silver bullet, and a silver bullet is some hard shit to get, but why is it that we all know that to be true? And we all think that that's what you kill a werewolf with. And a silver bullet, we still use that analogy for having the answer to a really hard problem. So think about that. Like, what is a werewolf supposed to be? It's supposed to be the hardest thing that's ever happened in your life, right? It's supposed to be the most dangerous thing. The only way to kill it is with the silver bullet, having the ultimate of solutions. So I still even think about werewolves. And I mean, reading about werewolves and just how other people thought about them, it even kind of makes you wonder why you have the analogies that you have and why we relate to that to this day. Like, think about how ancient this text is, and to this day, people are still believing in. every last one of the subjects, there's something definite to that, and it's a Western thing. I don't know what in Eastern cultures is still around. I think like they still have like the Oni kind of like belief system too, but
Well, yeah, there's still like things like, Chinese medicine, thinking
Yeah.
that a rhino horn is going to
that's so
cure your
true.
cancer and stuff like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of unscientific thinking all over the world. And it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
And
And like another revelation that I've had through mixed mental arts and Jonathan Haidt and stuff like that is that it wouldn't even necessarily be a good thing if we could somehow magically achieve this rational society where everyone behaves rationally. Like that would probably end up more like the movie Equilibrium, where people are going around distinguishing people for reading poetry, and everyone takes pills to suppress their emotions because people blame all the world's wars on emotions. But then it turns out that there's this cult that's basically controlling society, and that's not any better than a so-called normal society where people behave irrationally, but humans can't behave rationally anyway. And if we could, like, rationalism doesn't give you everything. Like like there's like we were talking about how people sort of need some level of, most people anyway, needs some level of spirituality or something like that. Like even though I don't believe in the existence of any gods, I've had, like you and I were talking about before, Parker, about like psychedelic drug experiences that certainly could be labeled as spiritual experiences. And well, like it's a good idea to appreciate those sorts of things. And even if we don't appreciate those sorts of things, they're not going to go away, which is why we see some militant atheists get basically religious about their atheism, and they become like evangelists for making everyone atheists, which is just kind of hilarious in retrospect.
yeah, I think you need an underlying purpose and you need an underlying mission. And I think if you're, because I understand being militantly atheist, because I mean, I think probably everybody within this conversation, even messing with mixed mental arts, would probably say that there was at least a little time in your life where you're like, yeah, and I was really, really atheist. And I was like, how can you believe that bullshit? And get really kind of angry at anybody that would think that there was a higher power or anything like that. But that in itself is kind of like I used to box, right? And it's like you get hit in the side of the ear and it messes with your equilibrium. The fact that you would say that anybody that was trying to find an equilibrium means that you're off track by so much yourself. And it took a little while to realize that you were even, or that I was even spiritually out of alignment. And that was the whole reason why I even had that anger towards anybody that would believe in, in whatever Christ. I was raised in a Baptist family, so to me, if you talk about anything that was Christian-y, it just brought up some bad shit personally. So I had to kind of separate that from like, okay, does that make people stupid, or do you just have something that's fucked up about it, Parker? And that was a whole thing about like having a narrative and having an underlying belief system, even with that. And then it's like when your personal belief system kind of collides with the general populist belief system, and why sometimes that doesn't gel, and just what comes from that. So I mean, there's all kinds of different levels of delusions that you can give yourself, or you can, I guess, kind of have imposed on you by the general population with the myths that we choose to believe. And I guess it's kind of nice to see that that's not a new phenomenon, especially in the age of the internet, where it feels like it might. It's just something that's been around forever.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, like I was saying before, this was apparently, this book was one of the first basically studies of mass psychology, but through journalism, which is why it's so fascinating. And like we've been talking about, it's interesting that basically like this is how human psychology works, and it's never going to go away. And we see that today, and we definitely will in the future. Like, they'll look back on like the way we behaved about social media and conspiracy theories and like all of the things from these books that people still believe in today, like witchcraft and ghosts and alchemy and divination, and then all of the new ones that people look back on in the future, like all of these conspiracy theories like flat earth and ancient aliens and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, this it's just I like how we went like levels deep, way levels deeper about our like philosophical and psychological analysis behind this book, and applying that to today too. That's yeah, this has been a really fascinating conversation about this.
Well, actually, I was interested in hearing what Dusty thought, because we had actually, when you were having issues with your internet, we had discussed what the next monster is going to be. Like, if you're a child that's growing up around now, and like you had to come up with a story that you could say everybody in society kind of feels right now, but you needed to come up with a mythological creature to kind of embody that. What do you think that creature would be?
A mythological creature to embody that. I don't know about a mythological creature.
Well, the analogy I used before was like, if you take Terminator, right? Like Terminator, the ultimate kind of like having AI, having technology become the ultimate monster, like ultimately kind of like an upgraded version of Frankenstein, because Frankenstein was like the ultimate in, biotechnology at the time that anybody could think of. And it ultimately, even though it was kind of society that made Frankenstein's monster a monster, um, it was kind of a fear of being destroyed by our own greatness. And then Terminator kind of took that on and took it to another level, if you ask me. And then the Matrix took that to like another philosophical level. But that's another discussion for another day. But what do you think if you were to think about like the myth of now, like the storyline of now, like with COVID, with all the things that are going on with social media, it's an election year, all the crazy shit. What kind of like myth do you think like maybe a child might come up with for this time?
Well, it looks like there's, I guess for me, like the biggest thing that's happening is just infighting and division, like human on human action. So it's not going to be like human on AI, human on versus nature. Right now, I'm feeling like a very heavy human versus human element here. So I'm trying to think of like an equivalent. It'd be more like I don't know, almost a post-apocalyptic feel, I guess, because that's usually in most post-apocalyptic movies, it's not really the apocalypse that the humans have to be worried about. It's other humans.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is like, zombie movies, The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
There's these zombies that are almost mostly harmless, and then you got the humans who are the most dangerous contenders that you have. But I feel like it's more of a dog eat dog world right now with all the division. So yeah, I think the post-apocalypse correctly defines what we're going through, which is probably why post-apocalyptic themes have been so heavy in the past 10 years.
Which is weird. Which is weird because it's like, honestly, if you were gonna have to like quarantine at any time, this is like the time where it's the shit. Like, I actually bought like all kinds of shit off of Amazon, and I was like, this is great. Like, I don't have to fucking go anywhere, and I have to anywhere. Like, before, I didn't even know that Amazon sold that much shit. Shout out to Jeff Bezos. I know that you're probably taking the world, and like, I have to bow to you as my corporate overlord someday, but I'm just getting started right now, man. You made a powerful ass fucking product. I use that shit all the fucking time. Shout out, dog.
Yeah, we all do. And then Dusty works for Amazon.
Yeah, I think this year I've made like at least almost 400 orders this year on Amazon. Like I've bought a ridiculous amount of tools this year because, it seems like because of COVID, we've taken more solo activities and just ran with those instead of like the more group activities that we used to do. And right now, my solo activity is basically just working and modifying my car right now. So I've just bought a whole bunch of tools. Like today, I got like a 300 foot-pound torque gun that I'm like anticipating the use of because I got to take my tires off quite a bit just to get into some bits on my car. And you don't know how much of a pain in the ass it is to have to physically like unbolt the wheel and then bolt it back on. And then if you got a torque gun, it takes like 20 seconds to get those bolts off and put them back on. So I'm like super hyped about something stupid like that. But yeah, it's just been like the year of the internal hobby, like the solo hobby. Like I know video game stocks have gotten ridiculously high. The Switch was sold out for much of the pandemic, and Nintendo stock went soaring. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty sure Sony and Xbox are doing pretty damn well right now. I don't remember Sony and Xbox selling out completely when I got the last console. I could walk into a store and buy it. It's not really the case here. They're really difficult to find. So, but I'm always afraid too. Like, what do these isolating activities do to us as a society? Does it make
Yeah.
us fearful of each other? I think that's going to be one of the side effects of COVID is that it's going to spread more fear and cause more tribalism. So it's not going to
Yeah.
really help that aspect. So we just got to see. I think it's going to be like the year, like I said, the post-apocalypse, man.
Yeah, well, we were talking before too about how COVID has like exacerbated the polarization due engineered by social media a lot, and like we've seen that a lot, like with the protests and riots and looting. I mean, I've heard people say before that probably one of the factors in this is that due to the lockdowns, people have been like cooped up inside more, so they're like going crazy, so they're more prone to do that sort of thing, and people are like on social media more. And like you were saying, this is like people are making different choices about how to handle this. Like some people are using it for self-improvement, like getting into better shape or pursuing really cool hobbies like that. For me, it honestly hasn't changed that much. I'm like I always read a lot and work out a lot and do creative stuff like this and podcasts and videos and whatnot. Maybe doing that a little more because friends can't hang out as much. But then, I mean, like since there are pros and cons, then like I was just talking about, people might go to protests, which makes COVID worse anyway. And then, like I was talking about before, there's the political polarization is so extreme that people are like, I've even had like a family member of mine disown me because I liked some jokes that J.K. Rowling made about trans people, even though I personally am the farthest thing away from having any problem whatsoever with trans people, and I've known like at least a handful of different trans people. But yeah, like the point is that there are pros and cons to this too, and people make choices about how you're going to respond to everything that's happening right now, right? And we've been talking a lot about how people go in all sorts of different directions with this, that they behave the way that they behave anyway, or completely different ways.
Yeah, some people are not designed for lockdowns. I am because that's basically how I've lived my life for the past 30 plus years. Like I've always been the type of person who enjoyed solo hobbies and activities. Um, and social activities I would go to, but they were never prioritized for me. Like I would never I wouldn't say never, but very rarely would I organize anything, with a bunch of friends. I was always the one that got invited to stuff, but I'd never really organized anything because I was just like, I always found something to do with my own time. But yeah, there are some people that are taking it really tough. Like they really do require that social interaction, and it can have some like extremely negative side effects. Like I know alcohol sales have jumped up quite a bit since the pandemic,
Oh,
and
you got eggnog too? Oh, that shit is great.
yeah, so hey, like I've actually participated in that. I'm not gonna say I haven't. Like I bought a 25 beer advent calendar, and I've already cracked it open. So I think I'm already 5 beers in to that advent calendar. But I'm trying to space it out because I don't usually drink. I don't usually drink much at all. But if I am, there's days that I don't want to, like when I have a lot of work to do or something like that. But yeah, because I went to the store when this advent calendar thing, like these sales were going on, and there was a freaking line just to get 25 numerical beers or wines or like hard seltzers. I guess that's a thing now.
I didn't even
Um,
know that was a thing, that they're like alcohol advent calendars. That's funny.
yeah, that's the only time I've ever seen people line up outside of the grocery store. Was for alcoholic. This is a grocery store, mind you, and there are people lining up before the store opens to grab these things. Like, that's insane. I went too because I was like, oh, that sounds like an interesting thing to do. Like have 25 different beers, and you get to try one out each day. I thought, oh, I guess it's something to do.
So
But yeah, there are a lot of people.
what kind of beers are those?
All of them are European. So, there's Belgian, there's lagers, there's ales and stouts and IPAs. Like basically anything you could think of that's a European beer. So, wheat beers and barley beers and everything in between.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Some of them were like, yeah, not so great. Some of them were pretty good.
Oh, okay.
And that's at least something that's interesting to line up for. Like the big thing happening in my town is like In-N-Out Burger came here, and motherfuckers
I
waiting
heard about that.
for 8 fucking hours. People were waiting for 8 fucking hours for a goddamn hamburger.
Really?
Think about that shit.
Yeah.
I was like,
My
yo,
sister lives in
I was
Denver, and she was talking about that.
I was about to go, right? I was about to go. Yo, they had cops that were doing straight up like real cops, like I'll work out cops that were like out there fucking like directing traffic, go like, yo, I hope nothing busts off. I was like, for some fucking hamburgers, I've never in my life had a fucking hamburger that was worth 8 fucking hours worth of waiting.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And plus on top of that, I'm from Cali. Like, let me tell you right now, if anybody tells you that In-N-Out Burger is worth 8 hours, they're fucking lying to you.
No.
Get better friends. Get people that fucking love you because it's not worth that much.
It's just a hamburger. Yeah, it's better than like McDonald's, but it's just a hamburger.
Well, that's like saying that it's better than McDonald's is like saying, yo, I'm the smartest kid on the short bus right now. So that doesn't mean like I don't understand. And I was getting upset, like just looking at the line. Like you ever I'm glad we're talking about this book because delusions, societal delusions. I'm like, so yo, when you're at the back of the line and the fucking officer leans into your car and goes, yo, it's gonna be 8 hours, right? And you get your fucking burger, right?
8 hours. That's insane.
Me too, man. I'd be like, 8 hours? There anyone behind me? I'm
Well,
fucking going.
But I'm just
Well,
saying.
a similar thing happened with the Popeyes chicken sandwich.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. It wasn't 8 hours, but I was gonna go and get it, and I was like, I ain't waiting in line for this shit. I'll just wait a month. And that's what I did.
But when I want to know what the dude that finally gets the fucking burger and he bites into it and he realizes it's just a regular fucking burger. What goes through his mind directly after that? Because if it was me, if I waited for 8 hours, I was like, "Dick, I better see Jesus when I bite into this burger." Okay? And then if I don't, I'm about to be like, "Yo, man, I don't know if I got played or something, but yo, like I'm never, or just don't play yourself. 8 hours. Who even has that kind of time? I have shit to do. Like I have fucking shit to write. I have things to think about. Why the fuck would you wait in line for 8 hours for a goddamn? You know what? I'm getting too into this. I'm just saying, man. 8 hours.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, man.
Shit better come with a blowjob too on the side if it's gonna be 8 hour wait. God damn it, shit.
Oh yeah, on Thanksgiving I waited 2.5 hours to get some Boston Market.
Oh yeah.
Yo, man, Boston Market.
I didn't want to cook. Well, over here it is, in the East Coast. I'm in like Northern Virginia, DC area.
Oh, yo, it's
So
hot.
we didn't. I didn't want to cook this year, so I was just like, fuck it, I'm going to Boston Market. So I just basically bought Thanksgiving dinner. I didn't want to cook it. Boston Market is basically year-round Thanksgiving food. So, and they were open on Thanksgiving, which was great. But everybody had the same idea I did, so there's like a shitload of people in line.
Yo, man, that's like the most bachelor Thanksgiving fucking thing. Actually, I can't say anything because I just made a lasagna and I was like, yo, nigga, it was quick. I was like, it was quick and it was delicious. And then I like, sat on the toilet for a couple of days because, it was lasagna. It's dairy. I'm sensitive.
Yeah, I've heard from a bunch of people that they were like ordering Chinese food for Thanksgiving, basically. I heard a new Snoop Dogg song the other day too. It's like a Christmas song that he put out, and he was talking about ordering Chinese food in that song.
Yeah, well, I mean, why not? Because I mean, everything else sucks. Why get into the holiday spirit? It's like you can't. Like this. I guess I'm a little like salty because like living in Denver, we're a hot zone now. So like I actually had like family that was planning on coming out, and then they're like black people don't play around. They're like they will not miss days of work, so they'll just be like, hey. So if I went there, I'd have to miss like 2 weeks of work. So better luck next time, motherfucker. Click. And that was basically all of my holidays. So like COVID is cool. It's it's bringing people together and saltiness.
Yeah.
Like I had planned. Yo, I was supposed to go to Reggae on the Rocks. I was supposed to be out there, like just like I'm not gonna say for legal reasons that I would have partaken, but I would have been in a haze of marijuana smoke and then gotten secondary high. If things hadn't gone, like super awry, and like fucking COVID came in and fucked all the good shit up. Like,
Yeah.
so you know what? I'm actually thinking about what I think the next like werewolf is going to be, so to speak. I think it's going to be like little, like either nanobots, or it's going to be like some kind of weird like disease that's mild, but it just fucks up your plans. Like, I don't know what it's going to be. It won't be something like Montezuma's Revenge. It'll be like Trump's Revenge. Like Trump's Revenge, that's what they'll call it. They'll be like,
Trump's Revenge.
like, yo, man, like you catch it. You catch it, right? And then it just comes in time just to fuck up your plans. You'll be like, you got a vacation to do. You got Trump's Revenge. Oh, fuck. When shit was going to be awesome, I got this shit. Damn it.
Oh shit, this disease makes me be forced to sit down and eat KFC and drink Diet Coke all day long while watching Fox News. Fuck, I have no choice.
It's like, exactly. When there's other shit to do, I don't know, man. Like this is such a weird time, and I don't like how people are now radicalizing themselves at home. Like, because I think it's now like a mixture. It's like you guys were saying that people were going to protest because they just wanted to get out. Well, now they're giving themselves reasons to go to protests. So you have people that are like, yo, let me go on Facebook and really hype myself up for when I go out and like see my friends. and then you like watch whatever like news outlet it is. Like I gotta be honest, I've looked at both of them. The Blaze, like the content's pretty great. And also like Glenn Beck sometimes dresses like evil Colonel Sanders, and that makes me happy. And then I've also gone on the left side where you have like Mind Slime or what I forget what the dude's name is, but basically like in a nutshell, all of his content is let me break down how everything within our society is somehow racist. And I was like, like that's cool, like for like a day. Cause like I'm black. It feels really good to like sit there and go like, yo, you guys are really fucked up back there. And then like just do one of those. Like that feels good for like a day. Then after a while you go like, that's not fun anymore. Let's talk about other shit. But that's like all of the left. I'll even watch the Young Turks. The Young Turks, like if you inundate yourself with that, you will think that like literally we're like 5 steps away from being like Nazi Germany. And like when they bring up and watch it for like hours at a time, you'll be like, yeah, dog, you got some really good fucking points. But then you like walk outside, you go like, everything you said was fucking bullshit. It literally is fucking bullshit. Like I can walk around like freely in my neighborhood and they're acting like people just like gun down black people, like just for like existing. And I'm like, yo, I can literally tell you that what you just said isn't true. But thank you, Young Turks, for making me feel like, I don't know, justified my paranoia.
Yeah.
I don't know. But if you like stay with those outlets and you inundate yourself with either one of them without like seeing the other, like it gets you some really weird kind of outcomes. And I've seen it now because it kind of goes back to that whole thing that we had with the dating during COVID. Like when you do actually meet up with people, then you have like these people that have made their own delusions, and then you have to encounter them. And you have to encounter the fact that they have a whole set of maybe like partial truths that they've inundated themselves with. And under normal circumstances, they ping pong this off of their coworkers or something like that, people that they see. And then they go like, yeah, Ryan, that's some really fucking crazy shit you just said. You should really, with that, you should really not about that at all. And that's what good friends do when they actually hear you. But you don't have that feedback anymore. So now you have people that are having internet fights in real fucking life. And that's another reason why I think that those protests get so bucked, because people are like, I haven't been able to see anybody and have a regular conversation and just say hi or just do like regular shit without a fucking mask on. When I do go out, I have all these opinions that I've reinforced, and I can basically like just ejaculate all of them onto your face. So once you have that, I don't know what the ramifications are going to be, but I guarantee you there's some kids that are seeing this shit right now and they're like, nigga, I'm going to write a novel about this shit. I'm going to write a novel because this shit is fucking bug wild. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, man. I'm just picturing like two opposing people going to a protest and then having like a jacking off contest jacking off their ideas into each other's faces. Hey.
Yeah, that's what they do, and they do it just as aggressively. I feel like I get Louis C.K. every time some motherfucker that's triggered wants to come up and go like, "Hey, man, you know why you're oppressed?" I'll be like, "Please tell me why I'm oppressed. Like, tell me why I'm oppressed, and why you, of all thing, white man with the man bun, why you can tell me." Or you can tell me about my oppression and how oppressed I am. Please let me know. It's like, well, did you know that like slavery happened? Yeah, but I've never done slavery. Don't even know anybody that really has. But I'm sure that you could tell me all the reasons why I should have woes about that, right? But they have this consolidation thing where they think that they're justified because they go on the Twitter sphere, and then every time somebody has something that might be evening out on the other side, then they get banned and shit. It's a weird time because you actually actively see that. Then you go on Parler, and I've fucked with Parler, right? Too far right. Like, just as just a neutral party, I'm like, it's a little, you overcorrected in the other direction. Now I'm like, I'm not saying that it's like Nazi propaganda, but it's a little too right-wing propaganda. Like, I subscribed to Donald Trump's thing, thinking it was going to be like regular Donald Trump Twitterness. Like, I've just got spammed with like basically Democrats are evil, and I was like, maybe misguided. I wouldn't say evil. like even if you like at the worst, it's like, okay, you're trying to stop racism and you're trying to be a decent person. I can understand that. There's nothing wrong with that. We still love you, but here's the reason why your economic fucking policies might fucking suck. And as far as the right wing goes, it's like, listen, man, you have to understand that just by virtue of what you are, sometimes there's going to be some like racist white right wing guys that are around you, right? You need to quell those guys just as hard as we are. And to their credit, Republicans and shit, they do that shit. They'll be like, yeah, those fucking white supremacists back there, those guys are pieces of shit. They'll actually say it. But then, for some reason, the media will go like, yo, man, but they never said that. And they're like, no, like I totally said that those guys were pieces of shit back there. But they don't correct enough sometimes because they're like, listen, I'm a Mississippi senator. I have to the history. I have to. So they'll do that. So that's like the bad portion of that. So it's like the two myths that are like trying to come together. And then people like will inundate themselves with those two separate kind of like entities and only the bad of the other side, and they won't see the humanity. And then you get to a protest and then fucking shit gets live because everybody's working off of these weird delusions that they have, and they feed and they get like bickery. And I don't know. I don't know what the next thing is, but just imagine the imagination on some kid that's like fucking sitting down going like, yesterday I was able to fucking like write in my coloring book with my friend Roy and shit like that. And now all of a sudden I have to stay inside and everybody's fucking pissed off. And mommy goes off to protest and daddy fucking drinks a lot. Like, imagine what they're fucking coming up with as far as some folklore. Some crazy new werewolf shit is going down. I guarantee you. And in another 10, 20 years, we're going to have a great fucking novel out of this shit. That's the whole thing I'm worried about.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to smoke enough weed and take enough psychedelics to have my mind ready for that shit when it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, every day. That's one benefit of weed for like most people I know who smoke weed, to be honest. Like, it helps you empathize with other people's worldviews and wonder how and why they arrived at their positions. Like, it could, like, for me at least, and for a lot of people I've talked to, it helps you like sort of crush down that knee-jerk reaction to just get pissed off at people when they say ridiculous shit.
Well, I think naturally, like, we have a cannabinoid system, right? Like, I think naturally there's something about like the calming effects of mushrooms and weed in particular, because I'm like, if you want to be closer to quote unquote whatever God is, like, use his gifts. And I find them to be like, it's kind of like, why go through the hard mode when you could just like take a little something and then just have it just be easier. And there's very few. Well, there's some potheads that I know that are pieces of shit, but usually they entered the pot game to like escape something. Because a lot of people think like people think of like weed as a gateway drug, and it is. The problem is what did you want the actual effect to be? Because then, weed does numb, but how numb do you want to be? Like, do you want to be heroin numb? Do you want to be like cocaine?
And like you were saying too, why do you want to be affected that way? Do you want it to be affected that way because you want it to enhance the things you enjoy in your life, or do you want to do it to escape life, which is like how addiction works, which is why like weed itself is not addictive. It's people who have the wrong mindset towards weed, who have shitty lives, get addicted to weed. Because like you were saying, if that kid you mentioned in your analogy gets a little older and they're like, I don't know, 14 or so, and hey, my parents never pay attention to me, my mom goes to protests all the time, and my dad drinks a lot and gets angry, so I want to escape this as much as possible. Maybe I should just be high all the time to escape that shit, rather than like, you know, getting baked while I'm having a fascinating conversation with my friends about an awesome book.
or just sitting back and like listening to music and just going like, yo man, when fucking Lil Jon says get low, how low is he talking here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if you're like when Cardi B says wet ass pussy, does she mean like the ass and the pussy are one like that are together? Is it a wet ass pussy or is it a wet ass space pussy? Like, what do you mean, Cardi? And if you can't answer these fucking questions, why are you interviewing Joe Biden? Tell me that shit.
Yeah, man.
Who sent you, Cardi? Who fucking sent you?
Yeah. No one asked that most important question, man. Everyone's like, well, like if you're Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens, you're like, this is destroying our culture. Or if you're someone like me, you're like, well, you're a feminist hero for talking openly about sexuality.
This is the same culture that fucking Prince came out and assless fucking chaps on live television, okay? Yeah. Like, why are you acting like this shit is new? I don't fucking... Like, why is everybody acting like this shit is weird? Fucking Janet Jackson had her titty whipped out at the Super Bowl. Get the fuck out of here. I don't... Like, people want to sit up there and they want to tell me about, like, the purity of... I was like, listen, man, if you want to start talking about purity... There are people that wrote like a whole constitution that owned slaves, said that everybody was like, you know, like let's not get into semantics. It's all about the idea. It's not about the little nitty gritties. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I forgot what else I was just thinking about that I was gonna say there.
I'm sorry. Sometimes I go off on rants and shit, and like it just, I don't know. Sometimes it just leaves silence. I don't know. Maybe that's because I'm fucking crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, me too, man. Yeah. Yeah, I totally forgot what I was just gonna say.
There was backlash over the Gen X and titty, though.
That's true. Yeah.
Wasn't no. You know what? It's not. That was the cool backlash. That was like the early 2000s backlash where people said some shit about it and then like nothing happened to you. Like stuff. Yeah. We're talking about Janet Jackson right now. Like motherfuckers are getting like whole careers gone nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah. It was like anti-PC back then was basically Howard Stern. And think of all the shit that he got away with that just wouldn't happen today.
Speaking of Howard Stern, that piece of shit. Now did you know that he went woke and he was like, I'm sorry for the things that I said. I was like, Howard.
Are you serious?
Howard. No.
He went woke?
He went woke. That's right. He was like, yo, man, honestly, like I said some really bad things back. I was like, listen, Howard. Nobody gave a shit about your show until you started doing that raunchy shit. You made your whole career off of that. That's like Larry Flint going out and going like, yo, man, I know I made a magazine with like bitches peeing on people and shit, but like, nah, man, that's not what it's about now. Like you built your entire empire on that. Don't fucking be a piece of shit and act like you're better than that. Like we liked you because you were a piece of shit and you were honest about that. That's why, like, when people wonder why Donald Trump got elected, that's why he got elected, because he did what people want to do. It's like, yeah, I'm a piece of shit. And yes, that's what I am. And people want to do that, but like, whenever you do that now it's like considered to be some whack shit. But you know, it's going to come back because people like honesty. We're going to recorrect towards honesty.
Yeah, hopefully. Oh, I remembered what I forgot about too. That it was another Super Bowl thing. The most recent Super Bowl scandal thing, of course, was you know, how people got pissed off that Jennifer Lopez and Shakira were like being all slutty at the Super Bowl halftime show, and I was just thinking, wow, good for them. It looks like they spent a hell of a lot of time working on this and choreographing it. And like Jennifer Lopez is in her 50s. She looks fucking amazing. Good for them.
That's what I was saying. I was like, that was somebody's grandmama up there, right?
Yeah.
That's somebody's grandmama up there, and you're gonna sit up there and you're gonna talk about how slutty they are. I was like, yo, man, just let them be hot grandmas. And you know what's crazy? Like, remember like back in the day when they were like, yo, man, like basically after the age of like 40, it's like dead. And now it's like motherfuckers walking around their 50s, and it's like, yo, like if Jennifer Lopez asked me for I've seen some close-ups, and I'm not gonna lie, like she worked her way from being like you know, she was 9.5, like 10 territory back in the day. Now she's like you know, if I got time, like I'll do that. It's, like honestly, like year 2000s, like when she was in that video with Ja Rule, like what was it? What's my motherfucking name? Are you early? Oh, I'm Real. That was the name of that fucking song. I'm Real. Like when she was in I'm Real, like delicious, right? And then it was like,
Oh, what about Ja Rule's comeback in the Fire Festival?
Oh yeah.
bro, fuck man.
Remember Ja Rule used to be the shit back when he was the shit.
Yeah.
No man, like this is honestly, Ja Rule made the #1 rap mistake. And every rapper that's done it can honestly say that this is a mistake. You don't fucking go against Eminem. Ask anybody that's done it.
Yeah.
Like
I always thought Ja Rule was like the shitty version of DMX.
Yeah.
DMX is the shitty version of DMX, man. Like that dude destroyed himself. He was like the Mike Tyson of like rappers, because it was like he had so much potential. Remember, he was in movies and shit. People were like, "Yo, we like you, DMX." And then next thing you know, he was driving a fucking car with cocaine in the back, impersonating a fucking police officer. Like when you get pulled over and you're obviously DMX, how do you think you're gonna get away with go like, "I'm an FBI agent"?
Maybe he was doing too much coke.
I don't know what kind of life you gotta live, because I live too low key to even like come up with a scheme to even think about even having people in my life that would think that would be a good idea. Because usually like, and having a cocaine lifestyle, like I don't know about y'all, but like cocaine is one of those drugs that like if anybody whips it out at a party, I'm like, yo, this isn't the party for me anymore. I'm out. But
Yeah.
like
I kind of have that reaction too, usually. Yeah. It's only happened a couple times, but yeah, I've had a similar reaction.
it changes the whole scene. Like it feels like everything goes like black and white, and like it feels like the music changes, and you're like, oh, I didn't know it was that kind of party.
Yeah, me
Like,
neither, man.
it turns into like a Dare commercial, doesn't it? Where you're like, oh shit, I have so many choices.
Yeah.
Like that takes me back to like the old school, like elementary school days of the do not do drug shit. Every time cocaine gets whipped out, it's some shit.
Yeah.
Or meth. Meth's another one. But I usually don't hang out in places where they got meth. They don't usually like me. That's a very biker drug. And bikers, they don't like black people. So, you know.
I didn't know that.
Well, at least the ones in the Springs. Like I grew up in Colorado Springs. So, like, yeah, down in the Springs, that's some real shit, man. They have like the Sons of Silence. You can even watch, I think they've got like a Netflix special about like gangs, like Gangland. Like I was like, yeah, we finally made it on the map. Nobody ever talks about fucking the Springs.
Yeah, I mean, here actually, there's a big presence of the Hell's Angels. They actually, I'm pretty sure they actually even own the local strip club, and there's a guy I used to work with when I worked at Rogers Video back when there were movie stores where you could rent movies from. I worked with this guy who I went to high school with, and he knew some Hell's Angels, and they offered to like let him join the Hell's Angels, but the condition would be that he would have to let all the leaders fuck his girlfriend. So he was like, "Nah, I'm not gonna do that, man."
Oh man, that seems like that's a low price to pay to like be part of a criminal organization, right?
Yeah.
Well, basically, what they're basically asking him is to hire a hooker for them all. That's basically what they're asking him for.
Basically, yeah.
I don't know, man. That's some steep pricing, man. Like find a chick that like I don't get to have sex with, but you do.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess. And like, who would be up for that? Like, I mean, is anybody taking the young lady's feelings into account with this whole encounter? Because that feels like that's like a chattel kind of thing. This is 2020, damn it. And women are fucking rights.
Oh, that's why you just hire a prostitute.
Like, you know, the thing about it is but we got to respect the sex workers. Like, is she coming from a union? Is she independently? Is she working for a pimp? Because I refuse to hire a hooker that is going to give all of her earnings to her pimp, because I want to liberate those whores.
No, that's true though. They're prostitutes who aren't controlled by pimps do have more freedom and like self-agency and stuff like that.
That's why OnlyFans is blowing up, man.
Yep.
Yo, man, like, I just got to ask, have y'all met like the women that like openly go, y'all have an OnlyFans? Subscribe to that.
Yeah.
And you meet them in real life and you're like,
happens on the dating app sometimes. They're like, hey, add me on Snapchat, and then I add them on Snapchat or Instagram. Then I say, hey, I saw you on Tinder or whatever, and they say, hey, add my OnlyFans. I'm like, no thanks.
And then, well, like, this is the thing though. Like, have you ever like seen somebody and then like you see what their OnlyFans price is, and you're like, how could you charge that?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I don't have that kind of money, man. And plus, there's this thing called porn. I don't need OnlyFans.
Well, I was like, what are you offering? Like, specifically from you? I'm like, yo, there's other people that actually have OnlyFans that give you at least a sampler of what you might get if you actually drop some money on it on like other sites, right? And you just come along and you go like, I think I have $20 a month worth of like you looking at me. And I'm like, that's real bold. Like, I don't know, man. Like, if I open an OnlyFans, it would be real cheap. It'd be like $1. I'd be like, hey.
Yeah.
That's just for costs of keeping this motherfucker running, really.
Yeah.
Like, so I could buy some like thongs and shit like that for y'all. Like, it would be real cheap. I don't know. Like, I just don't have like think about the level of like what you got to think about yourself to even start an OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Like I don't think, like, I think I'm an okay looking dude, but if somebody was like, yo, get butt ass naked and take pictures of yourself, and then somebody will buy them, I'm like, word?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be all gay dudes, so.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. I don't care. Like if you pay me money, it's green. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I just don't know what and that would probably be the disappointing thing. I'll probably like go out and I'm trying to get all kinds of clout and be like, hey baby, I'm Black Mamba.
Oh yeah, they're gonna pay you green, and then they're gonna proposition you as well. That's what I'm saying.
This is the way that I know me. This is the way that I would do it. I would go out and I'd be like, yo, man, I got 1 million motherfucking followers. Just like I told you, 1 million is nothing. And I go out and I'd be like, yo, baby, I'm Black Mamba on OnlyFans. Like, who the fuck is Black Mamba? And no chick ever knows me, right? And then I go out to like, I walk by a gay club, and then they're going, oh my God, is that Black Mamba? Oh shit.
Black Mamba.
I imagine that would be exactly how it goes.
Black Mamba is a perfect OnlyFans name. It's a perfect porn star name too.
Well, that was Kobe's name, so I'm sure there'd be a couple people like you destroyed. You're destroying his moniker. You're destroying his legacy. What if? And this is my ego speaking right here. Like I get so big that like it overcomes like Kobe's. They're like, hey, the estate of Kobe Bryant is fucking suing your ass right now because you're tarnishing the name. Black Mamba used to be associated with honor, now it's associated with this nigga's dick.
Well, can you actually copyright a animal's name, like the name of an animal? I think you can you?
Well, probably.
Because a black mamba is like an actual animal, unless the company was named Black Mamba, I guess.
I don't know, man. I know I couldn't just like if I did OnlyFans, I'd have to like give like some numbers at the end because I guarantee you there's a Black Mamba that's already out there.
Oh, Black Mamba 87 or whatever.
I don't know, like Black Mamba.
Black Mamba underscore 69.
You know what? Perfect. That's I would go with that. I don't know, like maybe Black Ice. I was thinking Black Ice because then it's like you don't see me when I'm coming, but you slip on me when I'm around. You know that kind of shit. Be a nice little like undertag on my OnlyFans. Oh man.
I've thought about that honestly like a few times myself. Like, what if I started an OnlyFans? It would probably be mostly gay dudes. I don't really want to be bombarded with dick pics all day long. That would be torturous.
Honestly, like if the money was good enough, I would take that. Like I'll be like, look, man, like, and I know it would be like weird. I'd be on a date or something. They'd be like, why is your phone blowing up? Because you don't get the notifications. Be like, yo, don't worry about that. So you should really check that. Is that your other girl or something? It's like, no, it's not anything.
No, it's
I guess the only problem, and this is what happens with like the YouTube people, is that they start catering to their audience. So you'd start inhabiting gayness eventually.
It's like I started out just doing like regular shit, and then all of a sudden it's like butt plug time.
Proposition like 1,000 times a day. Like, are you gonna put a dildo in your butt? When are you gonna do that?
Yeah, they're gonna.
You know,
they're gonna require it.
And I don't know, man. Like I've thought about what I would do. Like if there's a way that I could get my face out of it, maybe.
Well, you can wear a lucha libre mask during the whole thing. Like a snake design on it.
I get a Rey Mysterio mask and shit.
Yeah, man.
Oh my god. Oh my god. That would be amazing. Yo, man, honestly, like I kind of just so I can just get that mask. Like just have some gauge who go like, oh yeah, oh, is that a Rey Mysterio mask? Oh, I'm coming immediately. How did he know? It was so specific. Interracial Rey Mysterio mask.
But he has a bunch of different ones though, so they must be an expert.
I don't know, man. Oh, that shit was. Oh, that side.
Yeah, Rey Mysterio was from the same town that I was born in.
There's a real one?
Rey Mysterio's he's a professional wrestler.
Oh, I thought you said Mysterio, like Mysterio from Spider-Man.
Oh, no, Rey Mysterio is a luchador, like a Mexican professional wrestler.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know how luchadors, they have like those masks, you know. But he was like one of the few luchadors in WWE. So
Yeah, but wasn't
Okay.
it? And it was like a generational thing, right? Because there's been like a couple of them, right?
yeah, there's been a couple of them, but he was like the last like big name one because he won the belt a couple times, I think, actually. So
Which
you know, he
that's
actually
big enough.
rose pretty high. I mean, he was one of the highest rising ones ever in WWE because he did actually win the belt a couple times. So you know, there's
I
that.
don't know. Like, what's the criterion for winning a belt in WWE? Like it was all based off of
Nothing.
pop, right?
Criteria, yeah, it's completely based off of a crowd, like being a crowd favorite. You know how popular you are, how great you are with the crowd. You know that's The Rock was awesome at that. You know, getting people fired up. You know, he had the charisma and all that. So it really depends on how well you're able to work a crowd, how entertaining you are as a wrestler. There's a lot of little different factors.
Well, I was wondering because like the thing about it is when people go like I was like an 8-time like WWE champion, I'm like that's like basically getting a prize with your Happy Meal, right? Like that's just like everybody gets one of those. Like eventually, if you just stay in the game long enough, right? But then I found out there were all kinds of like people that never got it. Like I guess Mick Foley like barely ever got it. Like I guess there are a few big names that like just never got the title.
Yeah, a
But
lot of the wrestlers, all they do really, if one gimmick doesn't work, they just change their name and try another gimmick.
I was
Like it's
yeah,
all
exactly.
about, yeah, just like Mick Foley, he's had a bunch of different like personalities. You know,
Yeah,
he
he
had
like
like
went back to Cactus
Mankind and
Jack for a second. Yeah.
yeah, so they're always like switching up personas to see what works, because it's all about entertainment. Like if you're a great entertainer, you're gonna rise and you're gonna get that belt. And they probably, if you are a belt winner, you're probably gonna make a lot of money in merchandise and whatnot. I don't know what kind of cuts Jim McMahon takes from these guys, but um, I hope he pays his big stars pretty well because these guys have some hard lives, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they do. I mean, they get no insurance either, which is interesting. Couldn't pay me to get
Yeah,
insurance.
yeah, it's crazy. Like, hey, it's I guess it's kind of like, you know, there's the adoration from the crowd, but how do they pay for that? You know, with their bodies. Like a lot of these guys die young. I think like the life expectancy for professional wrestlers is pretty low, actually.
Yeah, and it's kind of barbaric in the fact that it's stayed around for as long as it has. So like I guess if we wanted to like kind of bring it back to the book, why do you think that that is such a popular delusional thing? Like we all know that it's kind of that it's fake, but like literally generations of people now have grown up with wrestling and it's something that's been around and it's so big that if you get big enough, I mean right around the 80s was when they started having like some serious mainstream uh like kind of content for wrestlers. So if you think about like Hulk Hogan, if you think about Andre the Giant and the Princess Bride, if you think about The Rock now and how they're so entrenched, and I mean even John Cena to a certain extent. I mean like he's in shitty movies, but he's more of like
Mhm.
what the Hulk was in the '80s now, like real popular. But he kind of is always around. He's kind of a novelty now. Like I mean, you can't think of the WWE without John Cena now. So why do you
Yeah.
think that for so long?
Well, I think a
I
lot
think
of them
it's so
try to use it
popular.
as a platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, they use it as a platform. I'm guessing that most of these professional wrestlers don't want to remain professional wrestlers for their entire lives. You know, the most popular ones tend to get some type of play in film and TV. You know, look at how many have transitioned. Like you said, there's The Rock, there's uh, The Rock,
John Cena.
John Cena. He's been transitioning over. I don't even think he does wrestling anymore. Does he really? Like he has all these other
Oh,
projects that he's
He
been
does.
doing.
He does. He just doesn't do it like as.
But yeah, a lot
hardcore.
of these people transition.
Well, I mean, like, but
Probably
why
does
do
like
we
exhibition
respond to
stuff. I don't think he's on the road or anything.
Yeah. Well, I think like
Yeah, so a lot of these people, they just kind of transition.
yeah.
Well,
I think,
but why
like,
do we respond to
in terms
that?
I think like in terms of why audiences are attracted to that, like I think that it's because it's another one of those narratives that people can get attracted to because they construct these narratives like soap operas with the different characters that the wrestlers create, right? And they have these narratives going on, and then they have these battles to, you know, that have these narratives constructed around it. It's like you could apply this like what we're talking about with the mass psychology of the book to almost anything that you look at that has like mass appeal. Like we've talked about religion and politics, and you could even like more similarly to wrestling, you could even apply it to sports, right? Because people construct these narratives about sports teams and their favorite athletes, and then they get like tribal about rooting for one team over the other, and there are these sports, and then some sports are like simulated like simulations of warfare, like football is, for example. And it's I like to, I guess that's why I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to note that Jesse Ventura was a professional wrestler.
That's true. Yeah.
And he was the governor of Michigan at one point in time.
Yep.
And from what I hear, a good governor as well.
Well, he was an independent, so he wasn't like a Democrat or a Republican.
No,
And people liked him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, like he was, to this day, he's thought of as being one of the most beloved government officials like ever. I mean, that's, people still kind of refer to him to this day as go like, you know, Jesse Ventura. If you have your name associated with him, it's thought of as having a little bit of political clout. So yeah, that's
likely they can no longer call him Jesse the Body Ventura because I don't think he's retained that.
I don't think so.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of like El Guapo for Boss Rutan. It's like, you know, you look at him now, he just looks like he's an old dude that looks like he was once in shape, but he's not in shape now. And it's like, yo, man, if you saw him back in the day, the motherfucker he was yoke.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember my first introduction to Boss Rutan was his street fighting videos that he made. He made like this. Yeah, he made like this. I don't know if it was a series or like a movie, but he made a bar fighting video on what to do if you get into a bar fight, and it had like all of these ridiculous things you could do. It was like, I watched it for comedy because it was hilarious. You can probably find it on YouTube somewhere, but it was funny as hell.
Oh yeah, they like remixed it and everything. He was like going dang dang like while he was doing his.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
he was doing combos and shit. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was my first introduction to Boss Rutan, that particular thing. It was the full video. I didn't know about those remixes either.
Well, if you look at him back, like when he was doing Pancrase, that dude was just like, yeah, like that. Like I could honestly see why they called him El Guapo, because that dude was like just fucking tall and just stacked. Like he looked like he didn't even look like he was like regular. Like he looked like he was like just on another level as far as like just physique and just intimidation. It's kind of like Vanderlei Silva. Like when everybody looks at him in UFC, they're like, yo, man, like Vanderlei isn't that great. It's like, that's because you didn't see that motherfucking Pride. If you saw Vanderlei Silva in Pride, that shit was scary, man. Like you would see him like axe kick people down on the ground and shit like that, and like kick them like super hard. Like he knocked, like, you know, Quentin Rampage Jackson, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, he was in movies too. Like all these fighting people, and
He was in that movie I told you about, Dusty, called Zombie Strippers, because I don't know if he still is, but he at least used to be married to Jenna Jameson, and she played a stripper in that movie.
Wait. Rampage Jackson was married to Jenna Jameson?
Yeah.
I thought it was Tito Ortiz that married him.
Oh, wait. Yeah. No, wait. You're right. I'm confusing them. It was Tito Ortiz that was married to Jenna Jameson. I don't know why I confused them.
Didn't Dana White said like Ortiz is like one of the dumbest people he's ever met or something like
Did he?
that?
But he looks like he is. Have you ever looked at like Tito Ortiz like really hard? Like he looks like he's like a jock that never got out of that jock phase. Like there's not a fucking thought that it just passed through them. And you know it's true because you know how long he fought. I remember when he like fought after he got his back fused. I was like, what? Are you out of your fucking mind?
Yeah.
Like that was like some Anderson Silva level shit. Which like, yeah, that dude too. Like I don't like seeing people fight way longer than they need to fight. Way longer. Like that last fight with Uriah Hall, that shit was awful, man.
Did you watch the Tyson Jones fight?
Man, yeah, because there was nothing else to fucking do. But I'll be real.
Was it any good?
No, it was two 50-year-old fucking men fight. Like this is the best. Okay? This is what you could say about it. Okay, for what it was, yeah, it was a damn good fight. But at the end of the day, it was two over 50-year-old men fighting. It's like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's scary because like they can't kind of hit hard, but it's not like as fast as like, you know, the 20-year-olds where you go like, oh, motherfucker might die. That shit's interesting. Like I was like, I didn't think anybody was gonna fucking die. I just thought it was like, man. The only person that I thought might die was I watched that Jake Paul versus Nate Robinson fight. And Nate Robinson took that fucking shot to the chin, which that was fucked up too. You know what that reminded me of? That reminded me of Cobra Kai and fucking Karate Kid. Because I was like, yo, you could tell that Nate Robinson didn't box at all. Like, you remember Jake Paul? He had that fight with, I think it was like KSI's brother or some shit like that.
Yeah. Well, wasn't it supposed to be KSI?
Well, it wasn't KSI fought against Logan Paul, and then I think like it was Jake Paul that was going to fight against KSI. It was going to be like the sibling fights, right? So Jake Paul, that was like a couple years ago. It's clear that from that day forward, Jake Paul was like, I'll work out by fucking boxing, okay? So he actually like did real boxing training. He gets with Nate Robinson, who maybe, looking at the way that like he was moving and everything, I would say maybe Nate Robinson maybe trained for like maybe 2 months, maybe. All right. And he went in there and it's almost like going against somebody that was untrained. So the dude was trying to, I think, basically get off on his athleticism, but he didn't know how to punch. He didn't know how to like balance himself. He didn't know how to do any of that. And Jake Paul knew how to do all of that. So yeah, like if you go against somebody that like knows absolutely nothing about what the fuck you're doing, yeah, it's easy to knock him out. And in that show, that dude didn't know what the fuck he was doing. That shit was just so sad. Like just to even watch that. It was like watching a grown man beat a little boy. And plus, Nate Robinson is like a good 3-4 inches shorter than fucking Jake Paul was. That shit was all kinds of fucked up.
Well, what were they weighing in at?
I think they weighed in around the same, but like I said, still being tall, and then on top of that, like if you're tall and you're trained better than the person you're fighting against, that's like lunch.
Yeah, that's an advantage for sure.
Well, just like I said, if you add those two together, the untrained thing made it like real bad, and then the tall thing, that was just like it was just a matter of fucking time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean that too, like in terms of like MMA in general, similarly to wrestling, I think there's a mass appeal to that because like there aren't like the soap opera narratives around it because it's like more of a realistic thing, right? And it's like it's the closest thing to like as Joe Rogan has said, it's the closest thing to old-fashioned gladiator fights, because these two guys, they're not fighting each other to the death, but they're literally legitimately fighting until one of them beats the fuck out of the other one.
I would have to say the closest thing to gladiatorial shit we have is actually football, not necessarily.
Yeah, it is.
The closest thing we had to gladiatorial was UFC 1 and 2.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, when there were no rules. Yeah.
Well, the thing about it is you can only get hurt a certain way, and it's not the same kind of way you can get hurt if you play football.
That's true.
Yeah, but there were no weight classes in UFC 1 and 2. It was tournament style, so they had to fight more than once a day.
One of those Gracie guys beat up some guys who were like giant in comparison to him, right? Like,
yeah, the first couple were Gracie won, and he was just destroying people with jiu-jitsu because they just had no fucking idea how to deal with it back then.
If you look back at the time, though, like that was just the style of the way things were, because that was when they had those fucking tough man contests too.
Yeah, Butterbean and all those dudes.
Like that was there was a time where it was like the Wild West of people just wanting some new shit to just fucking watch. Like I remember tough man contest was the same thing. That was like before UFC, where it was a tournament and people were fighting, good Lord, like 5-6 times a fucking day.
Oh, the tough man, yeah. It was just like regular Joe Blows, just swinging on each other without any training, like at all, zero training. They just there's a guy that goes in the ring and some random person in the audience challenges them.
Oh shit!
It basically just looks like a drunken bar fight for most of it. And they just had like this giant fat dude who looked like Kingpin, like he was just beating everyone's ass because no one could basically beat him.
Yo, and then he tried to make the leap to being an actual boxer, and that's when I was
that didn't work out well. Yeah.
Well, he would win, but he would like go against people that were just, fucking like scrubs. They'd have like, they would have like 0-2 records and shit like that. And then Butterbean comes in and hits him with like a shot that's not even a shot. Like,
yeah, it's just like the Kimbo Slice deal. Like he was just fighting all these scrubs on the street, and then he actually has to fight like real people who know what they're doing, and it's not that easy.
Well, Butterbean did, but Butterbean never even fought against anybody that was real. Like I remember,
he just fought about random people in the audience who wanted to challenge him.
Yeah. I mean, we always like watching that shit though, because like the thing about Butterbean is he was an everyman. Like I remember watching him, and I was like, and I like things that happen culturally, because I think that was also like when Fight Club came out around the same time, and that was like when it was like. I felt like that was a white guy fantasy time. And when I say white guy fantasy, Butterbean is this fat dude that like literally looks like exactly what he is, a dude that doesn't train, but he's knocking people the fuck out. Do you understand how much of a white guy fantasy that is? Like, look, and I'm still a fucking force to be reckoned with. And then you had fucking Fight Club at the same time, which was essentially a fantasy about the dude being a better man, okay? Like... being a better man that's like revolutionary. He's like, yeah, like my best friend is this guy that like does all of these different hobbies and he just does all this shit. And it's him doing it. But that's like, for some reason that like really gelled with him. And at the same time, you've got Butterbean fucking with his fat ass going around knocking people out. People don't think that those two things correlate, but they fucking had to. It's too much of a goddamn coincidence that they existed at the same time, and they were at the height of their popularity at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
like I said, it was like a fantasy. There's a lot of fantasies that I think about that we just keep and we never talk about. Like for instance, the 90s beer commercial is a very iconic thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing like it. We've never gone that deep into like madness ever. Like, remember, it was like usually like a blonde and like a bikini or some shit next to a sports car, and then fucking beer there, right? And like now they don't do that anymore because it's not socially acceptable to like just go like, look, this is what you want, and then there's beer that'll get you. Now they'll like do some shit where they'll just like have you at a party and you'll just be with like your friends and everybody's like laughing. They're like, see, they're like, drink responsibly at the end. Like, but they like kids would never understand the 90s beer commercial. And that's like fucking iconic. That's the only time that I remember in my life where people went that big with, yo, it's fun to fucking drink. And nobody said shit about drink responsibly at the end. They were like, it's fucking beer. Put it in your face and have a good fucking time.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't see beer commercials anymore with like a chicken and bikini like hey, if you drink this beer, you're gonna get laid by hot chicks, and you're somehow also going to get this awesome car.
Yeah, most modern beer commercials are super hipstery.
Yeah,
like I said,
No,
it looks
it's
like
all about craft beer now. That's like the regular. Well, I don't know. Maybe if I lived in a rural ass area with a bunch of hicks, maybe they get some different type of beer commercials over there.
maybe.
Who knows?
no, especially like Coors and shit like that. That shit is out here in Colorado. That shit is hipster forever now. Okay, trust me. Because if you go and you even take like the beer tour, they've gone like woke to the point where like, look, we have like equal distribution of workers, and we have a diverse group of. And I was like, listen, man, like I've been black my entire life. If you say diversity, if there's one black dude there, that's fucking diverse as shit. If you have two black dudes there, oh my fucking god! And you know what? They were real nice people. It was Steve and Jeff, and that was their diversity. And they like their commercials reflect that. If you see a Coors commercial now, that shit's fucking hilarious. They don't even like they went smart. They were like, yo, like we have the mountains and they have like ice and shit like that, and then it just smashes and then the beer's there. Like they don't even like fuck with the whole like any kind of, because Budweiser, they were in deep shit. Budweiser went full in with the whole like, yo, we got big titty chicks and we got fast cars and drink the Budweiser. Now they have to backtrack on that. Now they got like people playing banjos and shit like that, going like, yo, forget about it. We respect.
That's some interesting info here. Did you know that Butterbean competed in Pride and K1?
No, I didn't.
Probably. Motherfucker needed money.
Hey, what is it? Kickboxing?
Yes, he competed in kickboxing.
I can't picture him as a kickboxer.
He probably didn't kick. He probably just tried to get away with just punching people.
Well, at best, like maybe leg kicks, but that's about it. I don't think he could go above the waist.
Yeah.
But yeah, he competed in K1, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Well, those both Pride and K1 were known when they were in Japan for being just like, yo, anything fucking goes. We just want freak shows.
Oh yeah,
That's all.
Pride for sure, because you had Bob Sapp and all those other freak shows, you know.
Oh, little known fact: Bob Sapp actually went to my high school. Shout out to
Oh,
Bob.
wow.
He did. How
Yeah.
big was he when he went to your high school?
He
Was
didn't
he
look
that big, or did he?
He didn't look anything like he does now, like at all. Like he just looked like a little fat kid, actually. But like he was really good at football.
Interesting.
Well, I would expect him to be a good football player.
Well, like I said, he didn't look like anything. He looked kind of like pear shaped. I was like, that motherfucker was like one of the star football players. Like, yeah, he was mean. I was like, all right, I guess. I was like, I guess. Like honestly, like if you saw old pictures of Bob Sapp, you'd be like, I could tell that dude's a bitch. Like if Bob Sapp was around, like right now, like I would look him dead in his face and I'd be like, look, man, Like, you might have all these other motherfuckers, but I bet you a bit. I'm just playing. Hey, Bob Sapp, I don't know. He's in his 40s now. I could probably take him.
Unless he's still doing steroids. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Like, let's put it this way: if you're in your 40s and you're doing steroids, it ain't like being like in your 20s and doing steroids. That's just like maintenance, probably. That's probably just like, look, I have a brand. I just take my medicine just to like maintain now. It's not like to try to become a beast anymore. I doubt it.
You could definitely beat him if you took steroids too. Then.
I'm not. Honestly, man, like steroids just seems like it's like a whack regimen. Like I watched that movie Icarus, and I'm like,
Hey, me too. That's a great documentary.
yeah, it was. But I don't know. Like when I saw like the dude after he took his steroid regimen, I was like, he still looks like a regular motherfucker. Like I was like, oh, like I would be upset if that was me, because I know that I have like high expectations and I don't want to like feed into the falseness, and then I take them and then I'm like, you know what? Like I thought it would do more. I thought I would be huge, and I'm just like, I'm big, but I'm just like regular big. I'm not like
Beast mode.
I don't know, man. Like I don't know how big would be too big for me, but I feel like steroids, I would want to get too big, and it wouldn't allow me to get to the level of big that I want to be. Because I want to be like on Ronnie Coleman, and I don't even know if I have like the bones.
Why would you want to be a Rodney Cole? He destroyed his body doing
Yeah,
that
he's
shit.
Because
surgeries.
I'm an extreme motherfucker like that. If I'm gonna do steroids, I want to do it so motherfuckers go like, that motherfucker does steroids. I don't want it to be like anything like where it's like I suspect he might. I want him to go like, that motherfucker does steroids.
And one of those big old cow heart beating in your chest. Like, man, and then you gotta eat like 6,000 calories a day.
You gotta like talk like Ronnie Coleman too. Like, everybody want to be a bodybuilder. Nobody want to lift those heavy ass weights. I do it though. Ain't nothing but peanut. Whoo!
I don't know, man. He was a cop too. Like if Ronnie Coleman over,
he'd be a scary fucking cop, man.
Well, if Ronnie Coleman pulled you over, what the fuck would you even say, man? Like I know if he pulled me over, I'd be like, yo. Like I know you're not probably trying to arrest me, but I'm not gonna resist, man.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a lot. Well, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast. He actually talked about.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, he actually talked about the social issues with being a cop and everything, and I thought that was a unique kind of outlook on things.
Yeah, definitely. You can see like I've probably at least like 2 or 3 times I've seen some of the videos that you can see on YouTube of him just doing like crazy lifts and shit, like doing like a 700-pound squat and 800-pound deadlift and shit like that.
Which I don't know, man. Like at some point, like the level of extreme that is, I don't think I'd even want to push it like that. Because even now, like 225, if I lift that enough, that makes me tired. When I think about 800 pounds, I go, why would you need to do that? No, like just in life, like why would you want and need? Like, what are you doing? Like, what is the utility of that? I was like, of course you fucked yourself up. I don't think a skeleton is supposed to be designed to have that level of load on them.
Well, like even there was, I forget which one it was, but there was a strong man who was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he said like, if you're a regular person, I wouldn't even recommend deadlifting. I think that's like a little extreme, but I kind of see the point of that because, you know, I used to compete in powerlifting, and after a while I was like, man, this is like too hard, and it's too boring too to just do the same shit all the time, which is why I gradually transitioned to what I do now, which is like a lot of different types of exercise. Like I do strength training and also do like CrossFit type stuff with kettlebells and bodyweight exercises and go for jogs and do yoga. I like to have like get my body into all kinds of better condition rather than just be like when I was at my best as a power lifter, I was just like lifting tons of weight and eating tons of food and getting muscular, like jacked, but also like a power gut too. And I was strong as fuck. And I think like my best bench was 325. My best squat was, I think it was 425 or no, I think it was
Had to be bigger than that, man. You had to have squatted bigger than that because I squatted bigger than that.
I think I squatted like 450. I don't think I squatted
That's
more than
it?
that. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure my squat was like 100 pounds less than my deadlift, and my best deadlift was 551.
Wow, because usually squats you can get pretty big on that.
I always did better on deadlifts than squats.
Well, it all
Yeah, I
depends.
think
It all depends on your mechanics and how you're naturally like built. So just I
yeah,
know some
I'm
people
very
that-
I'm very bottom heavy, so that's why I was good at squats.
and I know some people that are like great at squats, and they'll be like, "Yo, like if I can definitely squat more than I can deadlift," which I think is a fucking crazy ass phenomenon.
I do
But
too.
but to me, like I'm like I can deadlift like up in the near 600 pounds. But if it comes to a squat, like it's just 375 is the most I've ever done.
Wow, because I always thought squatting was the easiest one for me.
It's
Because to me, deadlifts are fucking scary, man. Especially when you go like super heavy, and then you feel like your ball sack like wanting to detach from your body. You're like, fuck that! I'm just gonna drop this shit right here. I ain't gonna get a
Oh,
hernia.
that's interesting. I've always felt safer, especially going really heavy with deadlifts, because if you fail, you just drop the bar. If you fail with squats, like I always put spots on there, but it's still more. Even if you do that, it's more dangerous to fail with squats, I think. And I've always just liked deadlifts a little bit more than squats too. I bet part of it is because you can lift more, or at least some people like me, for example, can lift more weight that way. So there's like more of an ego boost, and you like just get this feeling of heavier stuff. And I just like the feeling of the lift more, I think, even though I like squats too.
Yeah, because this with squats, I don't know. I was always inside of a power rack, so I wasn't afraid I was gonna drop the bar and hurt myself. It's just I don't know. When I tried to go really heavy at a power meet, I cleared it, but I was like, damn, I felt like my balls were gonna detach right now. Like I could feel like my guts starting to push through like my ball cavity. I was like, holy fuck, I'm not going any higher than that today.
Yeah,
And it wasn't that I wasn't strong enough to do it. I was afraid that I was gonna get a hernia. That's it.
yeah.
I felt my guts pushing through there, and I was like, oh fuck, maybe my body's not ready for that particular thing yet.
Yeah, that can happen. Like you can like pull a hamstring or something like that more easily with deadlifting too. And the only time that I got so extreme that I guess my blood pressure went so high doing a lift that I got a nosebleed was when I was doing really heavy deadlifts. That's the only time that happened to me. My blood pressure definitely went through the roof doing that lift, which is probably what gave me a nosebleed.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing. It's like when I was doing squats, I never felt that pressure. Like, yeah, I felt the difficulty of getting the bar up, but I never felt that my guts were going to pop out or like anything like that. Because usually, I don't know what it is about squats, but I would always like at least know to slowly exhale when I'm doing it. And I don't know what it is about deadlifts when I just want to keep it all in to get that bar up.
Yeah, that's interesting. I always feel too like for me it feels easier on my back to do deadlifts than squats. Like I'm better at the technique than I used to be, so it's less of an issue. But I always have trouble keeping my back, or I have more trouble keeping my back in the right position when I'm doing squats than when I'm doing deadlifts.
Yeah, I guess it's just, I don't know. I did read like Starting Strength, which is like
By Mark Ripto.
yeah, it's basically how you're supposed to position yourself and like all the mechanics and how to do stuff right. But I think it was more based off of Olympic lifting. There were like squat and deadlift chapters, but there wasn't any press chapters. There was a bench press chapter, but I was doing a lot of pressing and rows back then, and there wasn't any instruction for those.
Oh, okay. I thought Mark Ripto was a power lifter.
Olympic and powerlifting, but
Okay.
yeah, there were like snatch and clean instructions in the book too.
Okay.
So, oh yeah, that was a bygone era. That's when I went to the gym like every other day.
Yeah. I started like during the pandemic, I started doing all of my workouts at home now. I already was doing most of them at home. I would go to the gym to lift weights once a week, but I coincidentally, luckily during the pandemic, I got my friend gave me some weights, and I just decided to like dig out my old weights and weight bench that had been sitting in my basement collecting dust for years, and started using those again. So I do all of and I have kettlebells and a pull-up bar, and I have like a P90X yoga video, or just watch YouTube videos for yoga, and then there are trails around my house to go for jogs in, and I have a stationary bike if I don't feel like going for a jog too. So I have everything I need, other than I would like to have a heavier bar and heavier weights and a squat rack and like some more weights for deadlifts and stuff too. But I've adapted to different exercises and basically have all I need for the time being.
Mm-hmm. I did watch one of your failures recently. I think you were trying to press like a really heavy kettlebell, and you failed on one arm. I was like, oh, it was an actual fail video here. Let me check it out.
Yeah, I always make sure I post my fail videos when I fail, because I think it's important to show that like you can fail and then you can still do that lift later on. That's because I got my for my last birthday, my favorite birthday present that I got a 48 kilogram or 107-pound kettlebell. And that's really difficult and awkward to use because it has this giant thick handle, like that thick at least, and it's like bigger around than the other kettlebells that I have. So it's really hard to like even press it, even though like with a barbell I can press that much, but it's more awkward to use in that way. So it's easier for some things but harder for other things. Like for the Olympic lifts, for example, like snatches and clean and jerks and clean and presses and stuff like that, I think it's actually safer physiologically to use something like a kettlebell for that. But for other things, like some of those presses and stuff, especially just due to the size of that kettlebell, it's harder to use.
Would you be able to use straps with that kettlebell?
I think you probably could. I'm not sure that I have any straps, but what I did is I just put hockey tape around the handles of all of my kettlebells.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we really diverged from
Yeah,
the topic at hand here.
We talked about like modern culture. We talked about like porn and OnlyFans and wrestling and MMA and workouts.
The great divergence.
Yes. All very interesting topics.
Mhm.
Indeed.
Yeah, weed and psychedelics too. Yeah,
Touched on all of the bare essentials.
yes, exactly.
All right. Well, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say. I'll be honest.
Yeah, we could end it here if you guys want to. We've been talking for a long time anyway, about 2.5 hours or so. So yeah. So thanks for joining, guys. This was a fun conversation as always. And thanks to all of you for watching. And oh yeah, I was thinking actually, by the way, for our next book chat, do you guys want to talk about Heart of Darkness? Because that's probably one of my favorite books of all time.
Heart of
Yeah,
Darkness.
I'm up for that. It'll be a first time read for me.
Oh, sweet. Oh, it's such fucking great writing. Like it's you know that I speed read everything, right, Dusty? And this is the only book that every time I read it, I deliberately read it slowly and read every word because it's just so fucking brilliantly constructed. It's such great writing. Yeah, I'm excited to
Right.
talk about that with you guys.
Yeah, I'll see if my library has it. I'm pretty sure they probably do.
Yeah. So I think maybe you guys want to talk about that in maybe like another 3 weeks to a month or so.
Yeah, sounds good to me, man.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Cool.
Apocalypse Now, Mind Over Matter, Next Better to Beat the Cow.
Yeah, exactly.
By Joseph Conrad.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So yeah, thanks to everyone for watching this. Hope you found it as enjoyable as we did to talk about all the book and go deep into the psychology of all of those mass delusions and then go into all of these other awesome and fascinating topics like drugs and porn and workouts and sports. And yeah, thanks to those of you who subscribe to my channel. Click the like button on this video and share it everywhere, and click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. Got more soon. Like I said, we'll talk about Heart of Darkness. Gonna do an episode about whether heroes can be villains soon. And I've got more philosophy videos planned, and we've got some other podcasts coming up as well. And thanks especially to those of you who comment, and even more especially to those of you who give me money on Patreon, which I greatly appreciate. And I'll put the link for my Patreon page in the description of this video, as I always do. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being a tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And learn about fascinating mass delusions and think about how that psychology of looking for narratives can apply to things that we think about today. And look forward to our next book chat about the fucking awesome book Heart of Darkness. All right, so you guys got anything else to say before we end it there?
I'm good.
No.
Yeah, yeah. If you're looking for more MMA content, we're actually migrating all that stuff over to my channel, and it's easy to find if you're on YouTube. Just put in the Woke Centrist. I'm basically the only one there, so there you go. And that's where all the new MMA stuff's going to be on.
Mm-hmm. And Dusty and I talked about Candace Owens' new book, Blackout, yesterday. And next week, we're probably going to talk about White Fragility, which is just as dumb as the Candace Owens book, but in the opposite direction. So that'll be fun to intellectually shit all over as well. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, yeah, thanks again, everyone. And adios until next time.
All right.